drink on the dash, salt air stuck in his coat. One-way ticket from the desert to the end of the road. They said, drop it, Joe, that trail's gone dark. But he boxed up his badge, kept the fire, kept the spark. From the canyons out in Utah to a hot white strip of sand, he's chasing ghosts in Gucci loafers with the truth in his hand. Undergrounder, Miami heat, he's burning up the lies on Ocean Street. Every pretty story that the cameras meet, he's digging up the dirt in the Miami heat. Undergrounder, Miami heat, when the charity checks don't quite compete. If the mission's fake but the money's sweet, he's turning up, turning up, turning up the heat. Stake out in a surfside bar, rum on the rocks, eyes on the mark. Every rescue sold in primetime glow has a shadow ledger in the dark. He's got whistleblowers on speed dial, tapes locked under motel sinks, following the faith-branded hero to see what the paper trail thinks. Undergrounder, Miami heat, he's burning up the lies on Ocean Street. Every pretty story that the cameras meet, he's digging up the dirt in the Miami heat. Undergrounder, Miami heat, when the halo slips in the boardroom suite. If the mission's staged but the cash is neat, he's turning up, turning up, turning up the heat. Will the case blow up before the trail goes cold? Will the glossy spin crack show the seams in the gold? He'll run every rumor down every back alley door till the last fake mission can't fake it anymore. Undergrounder, Miami heat, he's burning up the lies on Ocean Street. Every pretty story that the cameras meet, he's digging up the dirt in the Miami heat. Undergrounder, Miami heat, when the spotlight fades and the saints retreat. If there's blood on the brand and the picture's deceit, he's turning up, turning up, turning up the heat. From the dry red dust to the turquoise tide, you can change your town, but you can't change his mind. Undergrounder, hey, hey, Miami heat. Roll credits on the con, he's still on the beat.
Woo! Now we're talking. I knew you guys would like that. You don't have to say it, but if you love the new opening for Undergrounder, Miami Heat, before we get into this, the really sweet, controversial, weird stuff about Tim Ballard and his connections potentially to how we draw the lines between Tim Ballard and maybe Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe it might all turn out to be just coincidence. Today, I'm going to tell you about a coincidence that's just a little too strange. Now, I'm going to say this. Having thought about it since I came across this on Tuesday, my conclusion is it's mostly coincidence. But the coincidence is weird because it brings up something that we've been talking about. Inadvertently, it came back around to something we've been talking about with Ted Bundy. So I'm going to catch you up on that later. Let's get rid of this song, beautiful song that it is. I just want to say, like this live stream if you want Exmo Joe to buy that white suit. Just and subscribe if you want me to buy the Ferrari. And then go to the Church of Korihor's website and donate to our missions through the korihor.org/give to You can send objects, items that people will need if they're sleeping rough on the street, and especially today, we are collecting donations and trying to help people as much as we can for an associated charity, which is Cherish Families, an organization that is helping women who are victims of crime, especially down in southern Utah, well, down here in southern Utah at Colorado City and Short Creek. Let's talk about Tim Ballard. I want to show you something that's going to get weird. Just, we're going to dive right into it. Welcome, everybody. I felt the spirit. It was pretty slick, wasn't it? Meryl's on the case. Meryl, your name's like all over this, my guy. Your name's like gonna come up. You beat me everywhere. These places. That sounded bad. I want to show you something kind of strange on Facebook. I'm going to show you a video of me scrolling through Facebook, and then we're going to do a lot of dancing around. I promise this all starts to make sense. Pretty quickly, actually. So if you don't know Tim Ballard, look it up. You know Sound of Freedom. You know that whole story. Okay. Do you know who Matt Cooper is? Matt Cooper is Tim Ballard's right-hand man, was at Operation Underground Railroad, even when Tim Ballard got ousted from there. If you know the story about the Vice News articles around OUR, how ultimately Tim Ballard ended up getting called out by the Mormon Church and then ultimately excommunicated from the Mormon Church. Matt Cooper was there for all of it, still there with him at the Tim Ballard Foundation, has stayed with him through the short-lived, now defunct, disappeared, I don't know what, Spear Fund. You know, it's he wherever he goes, aerial recovery. Matt Cooper, the way that the women who have accused Tim Ballard of things have described him is that he is like a little brother, and to Tim Ballard, and I can confirm through people, Jesse Stay, the one person I know, pretty much one person I know who puts me basically at 1 degree away, 2 degrees basically from Tim Ballard. I recently realized that. I was like, oh, I know Jesse Stay. Yeah, I am 2 degrees from Tim Ballard. Still like 6 degrees from Jeffrey Epstein. So whatever. Not that those two men are closely related at all. They're just more closely related than is comfortable. Anyway, I want to show you something. So this is Matt Cooper's Facebook page. I was checking out the story. We were digging up interesting facts about Celeste Boris, former executive assistant to Tim Ballard, and this case where she has a skirt with Tim Ballard's DNA on it. By DNA, we mean the blessing of the family jewels. We mean the Ballard family legacy across a skirt, and that recently his attorney had to explain away as being the result of a consensual interaction that was just apparently business as usual at Operation Underground Railroad, nothing untoward, and that they've tried to explain that Celeste Boris is obviously blowing it way out of proportion. And for some reason with Utah's law enforcement agencies, so far that seems to fly. Okay. Ted Bundy. Don't even have time. Let me show you this dude's Facebook page. Yes, Lisa, send a Ferrari. Okay, so this is his Facebook page. You're looking
Matthew,
at.
thank you for coming and supporting us. But I really want to know and want to listen from you. Why did you go to Sweden? I know that you went to Sweden, right?
Yes, yeah. I work with the Tim Ballard Foundation. Tim and I became aware of the situation in Sweden as soon as it started happening. We made trips to Israel and met with Drew's community there. We're learning about the situation, and we tried 3 times to go. On the 3rd time, we just got in taxis. We drove in this area, drove down to Sweden to observe the situation so that we become witnesses of why we need a corridor.
Okay, so before we get too far into some things here. Oh, hey, can you guys see me okay? Oh, that's too much. Give it smaller, baby. Smaller, baby. What are we doing? Come on. I hate this software. Here we go. All right. Yeah, that'll work for now. Okay. Now, just to clarify a few things here. Okay. So you see there in the middle, this apparently is Matt Cooper. And then on either side of Matt Cooper are these two people who have worked with Tim Ballard in his work in Syria with the Druze, not Jews, but Druze, but similar movement, of course, because the Druze, if you don't know, they are religious community, ethno-religious community in Syria that has a covenant with the Israeli government, like a legal covenant with the Israeli government, to fight for them and to fight to preserve Israel from from their enemies, right? And they are being. It's true that they are definitely under attack from. Use a polite term, from regional forces in Syria, which has fallen into complete mayhem and disarray. But here's the thing. Okay, so Tim Ballard has been working previously. His organization that he more or less inherited briefly from Glenn Beck, who had gave him the opening money, the first $1 million to start Operation Underground Railroad. He had him running the Nazarene Fund, which started out as a pretty cool project, actually a good project to help Yazidis who are Christians in Syria, I think in Lebanon, to escape when they were under persecution. That started out fine. And then he handed it over to Tim Ballard to start helping him to start anti-trafficking out there. And then things apparently went off the rails. Eventually, Glenn Beck appears to have taken the reins of the Nazarene Fund back from Tim Ballard at about the same time that, after all said and done, after Sound of Freedom, after Tim Ballard's excommunication, apparently Glenn Beck, distanced himself formally from Tim Ballard, and things got hairy there for a bit before Tim Ballard suddenly reemerged. While he's doing all his Latin America work, he's also splitting his time going over into Syria and working with these Druze community. And for a while, I've been looking into this, going, "What is this guy on about? How did this guy get these connections?" And especially, when he's been working over there, how is it that he comes to know so many high-profile people we didn't know that Tim Ballard was hobnobbing with, particularly a man who is a big-time advocate for pro-Israeli efforts? That's not a problem for me. I just want to clarify that. Who is the former attorney of Jeffrey Epstein, also former attorney of Donald Trump. And that is name. I've been running through so many names all day today. Anyways, somebody's going to help me out with this. Alan Dershowitz. And so, how does he know Alan Dershowitz? How does he know so many people in Israel? Thank you, Meryl. And this post from February 8th of this year starts to unravel a little bit of that mystery. So these are two people from the Druze community. The woman to your left, her name is Rania Fidel. She is a Keller Williams real estate agent in Los Angeles, apparently. And then this gentleman over here, I don't remember his name, but he is. They are both Druze who live in, I believe, both live in the United States. But in any event, but they apparently they have been working with Tim Ballard in Spirit.Druze, an Instagram channel, and his fundraising efforts over there. We'll get into all of that, okay? But I want you to watch. This is a video posted by a gentleman. You'll see the name there, who Sharif Fareshi, who posted this video, and he is definitely from Syria. He's definitely from Sweden, and he appears to be the muscle, the mind, the boss man behind the movement. And I believe he may actually be the one behind the camera in this thing here. If he is not the one behind the camera, then the one behind the camera, you are about to learn, then the one behind the camera is Tim Ballard. I'm pretty sure. And you're going to see why I think so here in a moment by the time this is over. But it's interesting that Tim Ballard's always the face of the Tim Ballard Foundation, until every once in a while he starts putting Matt Cooper up as the face. Put him in the suit, make sure he shaves, make sure he looks like he's a businessman, and he's basically operating as a spokesperson for the Tim Ballard Foundation. And you're going to see in a minute, I think I'm just trying to be super nice about this when you guys see this, okay, Tim and Matt. You see why they don't why they keep Tim as the face and not Matt.
Humanitarian corridor. So.
So do you represent yourself or you represent an organization?
Yeah, I represent the Tim Ballard Foundation.
And one more question. Why are you here today?
Well, my friends at AIPAC invited me. You know, they have this wonderful booth. They're teaching people about SWADA, about the rights of the people in SWADA, and they wanted me to come here and be a witness of someone who has seen that firsthand, what's happening there. So.
Thank you. Matthew, if there is one message that you want to deliver to the people of SWADA now that they are under starvation siege and very harsh situation, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, don't give up. We're coming. We're working with U.S. Congress. We're putting as much pressure as we can on officials to open the corridor. Open the corridor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you're going to hear this language again and again. Open the corridor. You know, basically, this is language to say that Israel should control the entire region over here. Open the corridor is, you know, it's being sold as humanitarian language for what is really just expand the influence and or borders of the state of Israel. I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I don't make political commentary. I don't think that there is any reason to challenge the validity of any group of people as a people. I don't want this to go off the rails as being against anybody, and certainly not against Jewish people. I have Jewish ancestry. I have lots of people in my life who are Jews, and I care particularly about the safety of Jews. I do not think they control the world. I just want to clarify that. I wish that this story didn't have to do so much with AIPAC, so I wouldn't have to talk about it. But if you don't know about AIPAC, look it up. I do, however, think that it is wrong what people have sold us as a society, that to criticize Bibi Netanyahu's government is to be hateful towards any group of people. That's just plainly not true. If there's anybody who's hateful towards people, it's Bibi Netanyahu. He is a politician just the same as any other politician. He is not God, and he does not speak for all of any group of people. And everybody should be held accountable for their actions. AIPAC, I would just want to say, is an organization, as I see it, the more I look into it, into their association with Tim Ballard especially, is more a Christian organization than a Jewish one. It's mainly more of an American institution now than it ever was an Israeli one. So I won't hear any of this, to challenge AIPAC is anti-Semitic. It's not. And I'll challenge anybody on that. All right. So, but at the same time, I don't side with Candace Owens on her theories. Let's just say that I got no love for any of this. And I think that people go way overboard with conspiracy theories about this. But in any event, but it is worth noting here that what they just said was that they are at an event now. They're set up a booth. This is February 8th of this year when it's posted. And they said that they borrowed this booth from AIPAC. It's a political action conference that supports mainly the Republican Party in the United States, though there are several Democrats who are endorsed by them as well, and the Bibi Netanyahu's government and his party over there. So. But what's curious is that is how the video ends. Watch this. This is the ending of this video, and then we're going to draw some connections to some interesting people.
Thank you so much for your supporting
You
us.
wanted extra shorts, right?
Well, I appreciate that, supporting the Druze and support all the people who has a problem in the world. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, brother. Thank you.
All right. Dear friends at the Tim Ballard Foundation and others, get an editor. Not me. I am looking for work, but I'm too cool for you and probably too expensive. I mean, even if you do have APAC money. So I don't know what the association is between APAC and the Tim Ballard Foundation, why it is that AIPAC is allowing the Tim Ballard Foundation, especially Matt Cooper, and why it's Matt Cooper and not Tim Ballard, here presenting the case for Tim Ballard's work with the Druze community. I have theories, obviously. That's why we're here. What does that have to do with Miami? Well, it was when I discovered this video on Matt Cooper's page and this AIPAC connection that made me raise an eyebrow and go, oh, so not only do Tim Ballard and Matt Cooper apparently know Alan Dershowitz, who's very deeply involved in AIPAC, as far as I know. He's basically he does like publicity stunts for AIPAC all over the world. If you don't know, he's a character, this Alan Dershowitz guy. He not only do they know Alan Dershowitz, apparently they know people at AIPAC who are letting them use their resources to promote their work. Okay, all right. Well, I guess they're doing work with the Druze community. It would make sense that they know people in the Israeli government. We've suspected for a while they must have some kind of connections into Netanyahu's government, though as far as we know, we don't know which ones. And it's just curious because we recently covered, when Steve Bannon wants to get even people who are Jewish a job in the government, in Bibi Netanyahu's government, he would contact, as we saw in the Epstein files, he'd contact Jeffrey Epstein and use Jeffrey Epstein as a way to get jobs for people in Bibi Netanyahu's government. So I'm not saying that Tim Ballard knew Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not saying that he knew, but he knew Steve Bannon. He's very close to Steve Bannon. He's very close to Donald Trump. He's close to Alan Dershowitz. It's three people who are 1 degree from Jeffrey Epstein. Not saying that may be entirely innocent and coincidental, but here's something interesting. So we're keeping on Matt Cooper's
So Matthew, thank you for
page.
coming and supporting us. But I really want to know and want to listen.
Okay. So then I started scrolling down through his page and looking at all the stuff that my man Matt Cooper has posted on his Facebook page, and mostly it's typical conservative Republican stuff. And then we come across this. Watch. Oh, what do we have here? It's a picture of Tim and Catherine Ballard. Now watch as I kind of navigate around. I kind of recreated my discoveries. I went, aha, good. There's Tim Ballard. There's Catherine Ballard. We know them well. Looking happy and great, you guys, since you're apparently at least one excommunication from the Mormon Church. I've heard rumors they were both excommunicated, but I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's true. At least so far as I know, it's only Tim, but I don't know. Now watch what happens here. So I got curious about this guy in the middle. So I started looking through the people who are tagged in this. Here, let me restructure here. Okay, you're going to notice that as I drag my mouse around on the image, in this particular image, Tim Ballard and Catherine Ballard, this is one of the ones where they don't come up, and neither does the guy in the center. That they tag other people. Whoever has tagged this post has tagged a whole bunch of other people, not Tim or Catherine or mystery man in the middle. And then it gets weird. Oh, I think it was tagged. It's like tagged way down there in the bottom. Anyways, so you're going to see here that there are tags that come up, on Facebook. They have that listing there where you can see all the people who get tagged. Well, look at all those people who are tagged in this image. Here, let me see if I'm going to maximize this. Somebody shout at me if my voice goes away here. Okay, so you're going to see a few people's names here. I'm not in any way suggesting that these people are not innocent. They are, as far as we're concerned, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and simply being associated with a person is not a crime. And in fact, I highly suspect most, if not all, of these people are innocent of any wrongdoing whatsoever. But it is interesting to see the names that come up on here. Particularly, I went through every single person that got tagged in a series of these photos, and it was quite a lot. I want you to note a few people of particular interest here. One is Matthew Cooper. You see almost second from the top there in this list. You're going to go down a little bit here, and you're going to see Brady McIntyre. You're going to see Tim Ballard. And those are the major ones that you're going to see in this. So we're going to keep going from here. So that's interesting. And then, of course, the name that you see up at the very top is Andy Chud. I just want to, so the more I look into this, the more I have to say, the more convinced I am that Andy Chud is probably innocent of anything malicious. I really have to stress that I am not in any way insinuating that this person, whom I do not know, and I don't have any mutual connections. I don't have anybody. I've asked around about him. I cannot so far this week. I have not managed to find a single person who actually personally knows Andy Chud. I did learn a little bit about him. He's a very interesting character. We're going to go on. We're going to learn a little bit of about Andy Chud, and I don't want anybody to think that is in any way associating him with any wrongdoing whatsoever. It's just interesting, and we're only looking for the associations that connect Tim Ballard into some kind of privileged connections in the Middle East, which would seem weird for a man in Utah who, as far as I can tell, again, is just a sweet man who's happens to be rich. And that's where things get interesting. Got a lot of rich people that we're going to see names of here. I don't want anybody to harass them. As far as I can tell, all of them are just rich people with big pocketbooks who care about some of these issues. So you'll see that I highlighted Andy Chud. What was that beautiful sound? Oh, found somebody's. Sorry. What happened here? Okay. Okay, so this is Andy's Facebook page. I went over to Andy's Facebook page here. Before we go through his images here. So Andy Chud, his father. So Chud is not a very classic family name as far as I know anywhere. His father's name was I believe Chudowski or I forget what it was, but he's got a Russian Jewish name, so that would be Polish. I forget the name, but basically Chud is a shortening of a Jewish family name. His father was a Canadian Russian Jew who had immigrated to the United States and made a bit of a name for himself in the music business, where he worked as a music producer and record label. Particularly for, as far as I can see, mainly Black and Latino artists. So at least we're not leaning into any stereotypes. In any event, he started a record company down in Miami Beach called Imperial Records. That's apparently how this family got to be well connected and rich. And eventually he sells Imperial Records and goes and buys a bunch of media outlets all over the country, particularly radio stations. So at least we're not leaning into any stereotypes. I'm just telling you the history that's published on, and it's not even about Andy Chud. It's about his dad, Lou Chud, who is now no longer with us, passed on. May he rest in reason. And as far as I can tell, everything I've seen from Andy Chud, he seems to be a very nice guy. But I do have to point out a few things that drew my interest and why this suddenly became an even deeper rabbit hole that leads us back to Tim Ballard's semen. Okay, sorry, Andy, to bring you into this. Okay, here's Andy and his lovely wife. Seems like a lovely person. Don't know either of these people. And here's the first picture that drew my interest. Anybody see what I see? Angel Studios. Now, I went on to the board of directors for Angel Studios. Currently, I don't see Andy Chud being a member of the board of directors. I don't think that means that he isn't an investor with them. Maybe he is, and maybe he just loves Tim Ballard loves Angel Studios and just bought a hat for Angel Studios. In any event, they take a lot of pictures at concerts. This man loves music. In fact, he was a producer himself for an act. And I can't, every time I try to think of the name of the act, I can't ever remember it. But in any event, he managed some bands for his father's label back in the day. And his whole life, his actual work on his Facebook page, and this is where I first went, okay, I'm going to find out who this guy is that his work listed on his Facebook pages works with charities. I went, oh, he has money. But no, and there's not even an organization. He posts a lot of pictures of him and his lovely wife. The more I went through these people's photos, the more I went, okay, they seem like lovely people, frankly. I mean, they just seem like sweet people. He's got a great smile. I watched a couple of TV interviews. I watched one TV interview and then read another an interview with him. And like his whole persona is about how he loves music. He's just a man who's got a whole life of music. And then he uses it as a platform to talk about how, boy, it doesn't, I just hate that ever since, whether it was back in my life in Miami, back in Florida, or now here in Utah, because he lives in Utah. He lives in Salt Lake now. It's like, what I really hate, he says in the interview that I read, he said, what I hate is I am the most anti-woke guy, And that's when I went, okay, Andy, I'm trying to like you here. Don't be a dick. He's like, I'm the most anti-woke guy in the world, he says, because I am, I grew up around Black people and Latino people and worked with Black and Latino artists. And now I don't think I can even say anything around them, which is, Andy, don't say that, Andy. Okay. I'm trying to like you here. And that's the thing that racist people say. I'm just saying that. I don't think Andy's racist, but he says like some things. It's not every time, but I at least saw it one time. No, I saw it a couple of times actually, where I went, okay, Andy, don't say things like that. That feels like super racist, but all right. Maybe he's just set in his ways. I don't know. But you'll see, there's an interesting image branded with Operation Underground Railroad. Another one. See, this was a nice picture before it was branded with Operation Underground Railroad. There's another great picture of Andy and his wife and Operation Underground Railroad. It keeps going on like that. Operation Underground Railroad, slightly Operation Underground Railroad, etc. Huntsman, Kelsey. Is it Kelsey? I don't remember. I don't remember that campaign. Etc. Okay. So this is interesting. So it's pretty clear that our friend Andy Chud here, gentleman Andy Chud, is he's a philanthropist. He actually does appear to work with a lot of charities out there. And he was, at least at one point, involved in fundraising and or donating to Operation Underground Railroad. Apparently passionate about Tim Ballard and his mission. And then you're going to notice here we have this situation again where he posts these posts. And so he posts on behalf of a lot of different charities, which, hey, cool, great. I think that's great. But then he posts, he names all these people. He tags all these people in his posts. And as far as I can tell, the people he tags in these posts are not random strangers, right? They're not like people he thinks, hey, I want to raise this to so-and-so's attention. These are people he personally knows. And you go through that list, I can just tell you this, because I spent way too much time on this. You go down this list, and it's a who's who of wealthy elites of Mormon, ex-Mormon people, and even some apparently non-Mormon people in the Salt Lake area and northern Utah. So, but I want to draw your attention in this big long list here. You're going to see, particularly of interest to me, if you look down about halfway through, you're going to see the name Sean D. Reyes. Sean D. Reyes is the former Attorney General, friend of Tim Ballard's. Okay, Sean Reyes knows a lot of people. He was a bishop in the Mormon Church early in his legal career, which was not that long before he became Attorney General. He was a Mormon bishop for 5 years. It's an interesting story about growing up as a Latino Polynesian person in Los Angeles. His father was a filmmaker who failed, and apparently because of racism in the industry, don't doubt it in the slightest. But his story becomes a big part of the connection between Celeste Boris, the skirt with Tim Ballard's DNA on it, well, Tim Ballard's family gravy in any event. And then and strangely enough, this AIPAC situation. It's weird how these things just start flowing together in any event. One of the names that you're going to see, I think it's in here also in this list. I can't see very well here. Is well, you're going to see it as we go through and look at some of these other names. Yep, see, I highlighted Sean D. Reyes. One of the other names that you're going to see come up once in a while is the name Brady McIntyre. And there we go. Okay, so now you're going to see here, for example, you see the tagged up here. You see I have the my cursor over a name that is Brady McIntyre with like a one for the number one. Anyways, when you see his name spelled out, that's his Facebook page. When you see his name spelled out in the weird name way with numbers and letters, that's his Instagram page. And Brady McIntyre, again, another person that, as far as I can tell, totally innocent. Seems like a nice guy, actually, for the most part. Very conservative, obviously, but that's not it's not crime per se. But becomes a big part of this Tim Ballard baby gravy story. I'm sorry to keep mentioning Tim Ballard semen. I'm trying to say it as little as possible. But you're going to see him get tagged in these posts a lot, and a lot of times in these posts, you're going to see Sean Reyes, including in that image you were just looking at. Let me go back. Let me go back a little bit here. This is a picture with Sean Reyes in it, right? Is that right? Well, in any event, he was tagged in there. So lots of posts that come up, and he'll post and he will tag a lot of these people who are wealthy who's in the Salt Lake area and the greater northern Utah area, and he will oftentimes tag Sean Reyes, Tim Ballard, Brady McIntyre, and what's the other one that I keep thinking of?
Tim Ballard Foundation.
Oh, sorry. Oh, damn it, Joe. Brady McIntyre and well, those are the major ones. Okay. Anyway, so this is another one of these posts. Now, this one, if you go through Andy Chudd's images and stuff, it'd take you all day to get to this. So I had to walk back out to this to the images, the tagged images on Matt Cooper's page. And Matt Cooper, that's the other person. So you got this guy, Brady McIntyre. You got Matt Cooper. You got Tim Ballard. You got Sean Reyes. And then you got this guy, Andy Chudd, who's usually the guy doing the tagging, not always. This picture you're about to see is a meme generated by AIPAC or by IAC. Amen. This is basically the same Israel lobby group. It says my heart, and it's got a broken heart, is with Israel. Cool. No problem with that. People who want to express their support of Israel. Again, I don't support any conspiracy theories about Israel. I think some people go over the board with it. I do have my feelings about our country being dragged into a war with Iran. That doesn't have to have anything to do strictly with this right now. And, I'm not against other people having differing opinions from mine. But you're going to see again, you got all these people being tagged in this post whose faces are not in this post, as if they're in the post. And once again, it's a post by Andy Chudd, and it's one where Matt Cooper has been posted. And once again, as you'll see here, of the 23 other people that are tagged in this image, you're going to see Sean Reyes. There's Matt Cooper. Yeah. That's all of those. So, in any event, you see the same guys popping up in these posts over and over again, including in these pro-Israel posts and AIPAC or AIPAC adjacent fundraising for for political action committees that are promoting Israeli interests. Not that that's a problem. It's totally fine. Well, once again, here we have this is another Andy Chud post in which he, a few years ago, this is a couple years ago. Let me see if I can see the date on here. This is right about the same. Yeah, this is right about the time when the Tim Ballard story started to get covered in Vice News, and where it started to be known that Tim Ballard was probably going to get kicked out, had been forced out of leadership at Operation Underground Railroad, the organization that he had started right after the release of Sound of Freedom, and he's posting this stuff about common conservative talking points from that time period, but he leads off with Sound of Freedom just hit $100 million at the box office. Do I need to tell anybody about how Sound of Freedom actually broke all those records? But they did make a lot of money, basically convincing conservatives that buying a ticket to go and see Operation Underground Railroad was not doing enough. If you really wanted to save children, you'd buy 3 or 4 or more tickets to go see Operation Underground Railroad, not let it get in your way that you don't have enough time or interest to actually watch all those showings. So they basically booked a bunch of mostly empty theaters, where people paid for these seats because they were convinced by Steve Bannon and Tim Ballard and all these guys that they were saving kids by buying empty seats in movie theaters. Well, of course they weren't. They were told that the organization was going to go and give those seats away to people who couldn't afford to go to the movies, and it turns out that it seems to me that turns out to have mainly not been the case. But it's curious, so we definitely have a guy here, again, for all I know, nice guy, wants to do the right thing, bought into Tim Ballard's story, hook, line, and sinker, but definitely bought into Sound of Freedom, Operation Underground Railroad, and is definitely personally connected to this guy, Brady McIntyre, and Tim Ballard and Tim Ballard's people, including Sean Reyes. Now, why does that matter? It might not. Again, what we're about to learn may be entirely coincidence, though I doubt it. Okay, here's another post by Brady McIntyre, or no, I'm sorry, Andy Chud. He's tagged his own name over the face of the person speaking here. The person speaking here is Tim Ballard. So don't come at me. Don't at me about the fact that about connecting Andy Chud with Tim Ballard. He put his own name over Tim Ballard's face. I can only presume why. What do you think? Why do you think? All right. And then once again, we got our same cast of characters in the tag with Tim Ballard. So it's kind of like this club they've got going of tagging each other, of Andy Chud, tagging these same guys in this group, including this guy, Brady McIntyre, who, by the way, as far as I can tell, doesn't actually work for Underground Railroad in any way. Now, this is another image here you're going to see on the, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. You see this image over here on the right, on the bottom right of this Attorney General Alliance summit, right? Anti-human trafficking summit. You see this guy on the right here. This image here is posted by Andy. Okay, by Andy, the man here. That's Andy on the left, Tim Ballard on next to him, and Sean Reyes next to him. Then you got this picture of Tim Ballard, and you got these pictures of Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes together. Okay, if you don't know, then you should know. Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes are boys. In fact, in the lawsuits, the women's lawsuits, it's frequently mentioned that Sean Reyes, they even have text messages exchanges between Sean Reyes, who was then Attorney General of the state of Utah, and Tim Ballard, talking about how they were going to team up to go on a revenge tour against all of Tim Ballard's critics, and how Sean was going to shake him down, to a point where people, the feeling that you get reading these the lawsuits, the matter of the lawsuits, is that Tim Ballard almost has to pull Sean Reyes back because he is so passionate about defending, about not just defending, but frankly, going on legal revenge tours against Tim Ballard's enemies, which is going to become a big part of this thing. So these guys are boys. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing illegal about having friends. It's just interesting that these are the friends that keep coming up again and again, together in conjunction with this guy, Brady McIntyre, who keeps getting brought into it. If you don't want your friends brought into shit, don't tag them on Facebook with shit, okay? And don't tag them on shit over and over and over again. Again, look at the list. Okay, the people who are getting tagged in this. You're gonna see, for example, there's a family called Rockwell, and Egit Rockwell keeps getting mentioned over. I'm gonna go ahead and suspect this probably has to do with the Porter Rockwell family. It's in Utah. I'm gonna guess. That's just a guess, but looked at their stuff. Several people in the Rockwell family keep getting mentioned in this. They have a company that makes military themed memorabilia and things, and then raises money for veterans. So, very masculine, very bro-y stuff. But as far as I know, nothing criminal. As far as I know. Here is an image that Andy posted of Tim Ballard speaking at an event. Once again, look at who gets tagged. John Absey is a name that keeps coming up. I don't really know much about him other than he gets mentioned. He recently passed away, apparently, and he keeps getting mentioned by Andy Chud in a lot of these posts, and especially when it comes to Angel Studios and Sound of Freedom. So I don't know why that is. I haven't gotten to the bottom of that yet. It's just interesting that it keeps coming up. Here you have an image again in the middle. You got our boy Timmy over next to him. You'll see Matt Cooper. And again, you'll notice that as you see my cursor moving around, Tim Ballard is not tagged in that image. Was that because Tim Ballard lost his Facebook account? I don't think so, because he still has his Instagram account. Is it because he grew too toxic and so they stopped tagging him in things? Is it that they didn't want, is it because somebody's trying to distance themselves? I don't know. But then you'll see over here, we got our boy Sean Reyes again. Okay, so this is the interesting stuff that goes down over here. Sean Reyes, Tim Ballard not tagged, and then over here, Matt Cooper. I don't know who that other guy is. So presumably he's with the Harmon's grocery chain. If I'm not mistaken, I have always believed this, but I'm not sure I ever have thoroughly checked this out. But I believe that the Harmon brothers of Angel Studios are the same Harmons as the Harmon grocery store chain. So, that may be another connection, but it probably isn't significant. Okay, so we're back to Matt Cooper's page. So you saw a lot of this. So you saw these characters. This is the cast of characters you're going to want to be aware of. I'm gonna skip over this part here, but suffice it to say, this person, Rania Fidel, she gets mentioned in Tim Ballard's work with the Druze community and Druze people in Sveta a lot. But as far as I can tell, she is a resident. She is a citizen and/or resident of the United States. She apparently lives in Los Angeles, and she is a real estate agent there. As far as I know, she is not guilty of any wrongdoing or crimes. Again, I'm not suggesting any of these people are, but it's interesting that they saw her. I brought her up in connection with Tim Ballard's work with a think tank that was being built as Tim Ballard's network, even though Tim Ballard didn't get mentioned on their website. And she's often associated with an Instagram account you're going to see coming up here in some of these other clips that I'm going to show you, called spirit.druze. And she keeps getting mentioned, or she keeps mentioning. Her Facebook page is this very, far right conservative Republican stuff. She's very involved apparently in Republican politics and things. Again, that's not a crime. So, but it's interesting to see that then she listed, I will show just real quickly, she has listed this website that seems to me like it's new since the last time we talked about her and their think tank, which I don't see much of anymore. Maybe because I'm just not looking at it. And that is this website called Covenant. Um, it's like covenantcharity.org or something like that. Anyways, suffice it to say, nice looking website that has a whole lot of nothing except for that you can email the people who run the organization, see pictures of her standing at the podium. This, unless that's not her, but I'm pretty sure that's her. And you can also donate, and there's a donation form. So basically, this is just about what you would need if you wanted the most crude and rudimentary website for collecting donations. So I don't know how much money they have. I don't know anything about this organization other than I had not seen this website before. Maybe that's just because it didn't look hard enough. But now all of a sudden it's here, and it's curious. And then if you click on any of the learn more information, it takes you to a form that says, oh, you can email us and we'll answer questions. So anyway, so we're moving on from there. Oh, yes. And then you have these pictures.
Do you represent?
For hell's sake, Joe. Sorry about that, guys. Let me get back there. Then we have these images here. And this is from Instagram, I believe. Okay, yeah. You remember I said Brady McIntyre, when you see his name spelled with a like a 1 instead of an I, that means you're on his Instagram page. Also, you're kind of like you're on his Instagram page. And look where he is. Look who we're with. So here on the left, that is our friend Brady McIntyre. Epic beard gets more epic with time. Man with less epic beard on the right, less epic beard on the right is Glenn Beck. Okay, you get the idea. Yeah. And then you see interesting people who get tagged in this here. But yeah. Skip ahead here a little bit. Lots of basically that's not the last picture with, suffice it to say, that's not the last picture with Glenn Beck. Okay. So Glenn Beck apparently and Brady McIntyre, they are boys. They post things, have events together and so forth. And that would make sense. Oh, the thing that I did want to mention here, though, is that you will see in one of these, I think it's this one here, that he also tags the Nazarene Fund. So we don't know everybody who gave money to all these organizations, but it would seem that Brady McIntyre's interest in both Tim Ballard and or Glenn Beck and or Andy Chudd has to do with the Nazarene Fund, which would have to do with their work, particularly with the Yazidi community out in Syria, more than anything else. They did a little bit of work, apparently, allegedly, in Ukraine as well, I believe. As far as I know, again, the story of the Nazarene Fund and the frustration that Glenn Beck had with Tim Ballard on the Nazarene Fund, I've always been given to understand, was that Tim Ballard, once again, like Operation Underground Railroad, they never actually rescued anyone. At a difference from when Glenn Beck himself was running the Nazarene Fund kind of as a personal project, apparently they actually did rescue people when Glenn Beck himself was running it. And when Glenn Beck is better at anti-trafficking than you are, Timmy boy, you suck. Personal opinion. Okay, so we're going to get into some more things here. And then there's this guy, Sharif Farashi, who is the person who actually posted this video. He is actually from Zweda, apparently, and is basically, he appears to be the ringleader. He apparently is the person who is actually running the organizations and making the connections behind the scenes. What is his connection to Netanyahu's government, if any? I mean, he obviously is a fighter. If he's from the Druze community, he is legally obligated. They basically have a conscription agreement with Israel that even though they are not citizens of Israel, as I understand it, even though they are not citizens of Israel, they're conscripted. Their young men are obligated to be conscripted into the IDF. And from what I understand, I was talking to somebody today who said, "Oh yeah, the Druze, the young men from the Druze community, are known to be the fiercest fighters in the IDF. Like they're known to be particularly good. I don't know what special operations commandos. I don't know much more about that. I haven't taken that much interest into that particular subject. So yeah, so that's who our man here is. And I think that's pretty much everything with this clip. Okay. Oh yeah. So the reason why this guy is interesting and why this came back to a head about Tim Ballard and the allegations by Celeste Boris that are coming back up in the news as they now have the evidence. There are depositions being taken. There is evidence now that was decided by a judge that was reason enough to decide that Tim Ballard had to be ordered to stay away from Celeste Boris, and there was a protection order against him based on these allegations of sexual assault from Celeste Boris because she provided this skirt, as I understand it, a leather skirt that he said had Tim Ballard's DNA. And I've actually seen the incident report, the officer incident report with the Utah County Sheriff's Office, where they are saying that they filed for a warrant to get Tim to compel Tim Ballard to come in and give a DNA sample, which was a cheek swab, not that kind of DNA sample, to match his DNA with his DNA. And it was 100% match, apparently. And so the reason why that's interesting is exactly what you see at the top of Brady McIntyre's Facebook page here, Max Place. And that's where things get a little interesting. If you know, you know. Let's go ahead and pull this down now. Whew. That was quite a rabbit hole. We're about to go down news. So take a little breather. Everybody get a little air before I get to why all of this is interesting, and then we'll go and look at actual clips from Tim Ballard. and I'm going to tell you why it especially worries me and kind of pisses me off what we're discovering connected with this whole circumstance. The timing of all of this makes me a little extra frustrated with Tim Ballard. But in any event, I'm going to share now with you a screen for an article from the Salt Lake Tribune. There. Okay. So you guys see this all right? Just want to make sure everything looks good. Boom, boom, boom. Whoops. No, that's probably not it. Is that better? No, right? Yeah. That's good enough, right? Let's go with this one for now. All right. A look inside the official record meetings Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes held at his unofficial office in a private club. Now, those of you who were watching the Utah political cycle when Sean Reyes dropped out of Utah politics, you will know that he fought hard to keep his personal calendar from being published to the public, which only made people fight for it harder. And now, and before long, we saw that while this was going on while he was still defending Tim Ballard, who was at that time, according to his supporters, and according to Tim Ballard, apparently himself, destined by God, blessed by two prophets of God, one an official prophet of the Mormon Church, and one a kind of pseudo prophet, Tom Harrison, who's also Chad and Lori Daybell's Mormon prophet. That's my interpretation and not just mine. But in any event, while Sean Reyes was still defending Tim Ballard, and before he had made a statement where he basically said that he felt betrayed by Tim Ballard and abandoned him, was right when he was trying to keep the public from seeing a secret calendar of events while he was organizing his campaign to run for re-election. And so new calendar records show Reyes held 30 meetings inside Max Place a members-only club in downtown Salt Lake. Again, remember, this is our friend Brady McIntyre, who, as far as I know, is innocent of any crime and wrongdoing. Actually seems like a pretty nice guy, apart from some of his political views. But I don't choose my friends based on their political views, and not that he's a friend. Down in the basement of a beige brick building, it says, across from Pioneer Park is an exclusive secretive club where a black Chesterfield couch sat for a period of time beneath a placard that read, "Reserved for the General." Over the course of the past several years, this urban speakeasy served as the satellite office for Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, where recently released calendar records show 30 scheduled meetings to discuss official state business between 2021 and September 2023. Now, mind you, this is in the run up to the release of Sound of Freedom, and then the release of Sound of Freedom, and then Tim Ballard's sudden collapse. All this was going on, and at the same time that most of this material and interactions between Sean Reyes and Tim Ballard, who are friends, or at least seem to be, they start to collect. All this material starts to get collected: text messages, meetings. In 2013, but this goes all the way back to 20. No, I think it was 2014 when they went down to Colombia and did that sting operation together. Sean Reyes is part of that story, the Sound of Freedom story. He went with Tim Ballard to pose as a trafficker in that sting operation that we're going to actually hear Tim Ballard talk about again, because even though Tim Ballard's attorney, Mark Eisenhut, don't sue, this is true, defended him in court before the Utah Superior Court, defended Tim Ballard by saying that the movie Sound of Freedom is loosely inspired by Tim Ballard and is not in any way an accurate depiction of Tim Ballard and his life, which, by the way, the legal counsel, the attorney for Operation Underground Railroad, eventually left Operation Underground Railroad specifically in protest, saying that that was true, that Tim Ballard, that she was involved in the cases described in Operation Underground in Sound of Freedom, and that she defied the narrative and said Tim Ballard totally fabricated the whole story. It didn't go down at all the way that it's depicted in the film. So, and that she had been the prosecutor in California in the case with the little boy in the van that the movie starts out with, and supposedly that little boy has a sister that's been, kidnapped and sold into trafficking, in Honduras and so on. She's like, none of that happened. And you find out the true story of what happened with that little boy. It just break your heart how wrong, how incredibly misleading Sound of Freedom is about that story. It is so much darker and so much more devastating. And then it's so shocking how little Tim Ballard actually had to do with it. So in any event, he actually did, again, Tim Ballard has ever since then continued to push the narrative that the story of Sound of Freedom is basically true, even if they had to take a few creative liberties with it. So in any event, so they're talking about Max Place here. Max Place touts itself as an exclusive VIP venue, a private club with no more than 300 members that has played host to professional athletes like Karl Malone, John Stockton, and Charles Barkley, as well as other high-profile celebrities from mixed martial artists to rockers like 1990s band Everclear, which played a show for Max Place last year. Okay, so you get an idea basically of what's going on here. But here's where things get interesting. So you're going to talk about this guy, Alan Crooks, who was Reyes, main man setting up all these meetings, and how that related to Reyes' campaign to get reelected. Campaign meetings are not allowed at the Capitol, Crooks said. The very unfortunately named Crooks said. So if the Attorney General is holding campaign meetings at Max, sometimes it's easier to have official meetings there too, rather than go back and forth to his Capitol office. It's more convenient and it's very private, so it works out kind of nice, Crooks said. We see it as part of our campaign office space. Brady McIntyre opened Max Place in 2019, leaving his career in finance to build a club for business moguls, he said during a tour of the Hideaway this week. Now, okay, so anyways, so let's move on to the important facts of this. Okay, basically, as I understand it, I want to just cover this real quick. Brady McIntyre. I know one person who knows Brady McIntyre. And the explanation I got from this one person is I don't know him that well, which was that he was a trainer, knew him as a trainer at Morgan Stanley back in the early 2000s, where he was training people to get their, what do you call it, Category 7, their Chapter 7 or whatever, their Series 7 licenses. Basically, from what I can tell, what I've seen, he worked as a financial planner at E-Trade, and he worked as a financial planner and as a trainer at Morgan Stanley off and on over the course of 20 years. Then he retired from Wall Street. He bought an Italian place or started an Italian food restaurant in Salt Lake, I believe. And then he started Max Place. I'm very curious. This guy who now is also being tagged by Andy Chud in these multiple posts over and over again, Brady McIntyre, Brady McIntyre, Brady McIntyre, Brady McIntyre. On his Facebook page, it says that he has 2 locations now for Max Place, one in Salt Lake City and one in Miami Beach. Does that have anything to do with Andy Chud? Maybe not. Those are 2 cities that are big places. It could have nothing to do with each other. They both run in the same circles. And it always always with Brady McIntyre and or Sean Reyes and or Tim Ballard somewhere in the mix. And Matt Cooper, who we learned with this post apparently is holding fundraising events for the Tim Ballard Foundation and their work among the Druze people at least in one instance at a booth hosted by AIPAC. Might mean that. What does it mean? Nothing. Maybe just coincidence, but it's a lot of coincidence, especially considering this. I think we've got enough of this. Let me see here. Okay, here we go. This is going to link us to another one. Oh, so in the end, what the reason why this was a scandal wasn't just because Reyes was taking meetings more or less off the books. With powerful people and wealthy donors and so forth, which doesn't appear to have been in any event breaking the law necessarily, but the campaign wasn't paying for his membership at Max Place. Max Place. Apparently his campaign man, his right-hand man, was the guy who was paying the fee, which I believe is something like $399 a month. And so there's a lot of this out-of-pocket money coming around. And then the campaign would pick up the tab for meals and tips to the barbers. Officially on the books, apparently, Max Place is a barber shop. But it has an underground event venue space where they have things like the most toxic masculine stuff, the most silly masculine stuff you've ever heard of. They have like arm wrestling competitions. They have like martial arts contests and things. They have, old heavy metal bands and you don't see anywhere anymore give exclusive concerts there. And then they have charity events where they raise money for charities. And that appears to be how Andy Chud is involved, because Andy Chud works with charities. And, that apparently is not just a line. Apparently he actually does work with charities. So in any event, and that's what he does all day. Must be nice. But then there's this case, this thing here. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, so then it was discovered that Reyes' campaign has made 92 payments to Max Place for a total of $10,760, ranging from regular $1 payments listed as office supplies and subscription to a $2,365 payment in April 2021. So, in other words, you got campaign funds that are just kind of slipping into Brady McIntyre's, I don't know, by his personal pocket, but, into his operation from Sean Reyes' campaign. And now all of a sudden starting to feel at least like it makes a lot more sense why Andy Chudd always seems to almost always tag Brady McIntyre and Sean Reyes in the same things. And oftentimes when he's, dealing with Operation Underground Railroad, or anything related to Tim Ballard or Matt Cooper. And why that got heated. Let's see here. Why that got heated in the Tim Ballard situation. Let's see if I can find the link here because I have the other one. Do I just want to link over to this one? No, we're not. No, we're gonna find it. We're gonna find this one here. Oh, I think it's right at the top here. Boom, boom, boom. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Okay. In April, attorneys for a group of women accusing Tim Ballard, this is in 2023, accusing Tim Ballard, the founder of the anti-trafficking group Operation Underground Railroad, of sexual assault and rape, alleged in court filings that Ballard arranged a penthouse with women and cocaine at Mac's place. You better believe we're going to be clicking on that. Let me make sure. Okay, cool. And it should take you over with me. You guys all see Tim Ballard arranged penthouse for AG Sean Reyes? Okay, that's where we're going now. All right. This is the part where we get to, we've done the rock and roll. Now we're going back and we're catching up on the hookers and blow. A spokesperson from Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes denied the accusations and dismissed the claims in the lawsuit as ridiculous. Here we go. A new filing in the lawsuit. This is in April 30th, 2024. A new filing in the lawsuit brought by 5 women accusing Tim Ballard of sexual assault has added an allegation of rape, as well as a host of new assertions, including a startling accusation that Ballard arranged a penthouse with women and cocaine at a private club in downtown Salt Lake City for Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes. The Attorney General denied the allegations, dismissing it as ridiculous. The amended complaint filed Friday evening alleges that Operation Underground Railroad, the anti-trafficking nonprofit Ballard founded, had given nearly $1 million in grants to Reyes' office in order to motivate General Reyes to protect Ballard and OUR. After a criminal investigation was opened by the Davis County Attorney's Office, Ballard was upset, the suit asserts, especially since Ballard had made arrangements for General Reyes to use a penthouse at Mac's place with women and cocaine. Mac's Place is an exclusive social club located north of Pioneer Park. It has frequent high-profile guests and contains meeting spaces, a shoe shine stand, barber chairs, and massage tables. Ahem. Reyes, whose decade-long personal and professional relationship with Ballard has come under scrutiny, denied the latest allegations through a spokesperson Monday. Reyes announced in December that he would not seek re-election. Yeah, you think? This, along with several other allegations, are just absolutely ridiculous, said Alan Crooks, Reyes' political consultant. The court filing attributes the alleged penthouse arrangement to anonymous witnesses and does not elaborate on the source of the allegation or whether witnesses saw Reyes using cocaine. Ah, yes. The infamous, there may have been blow, there may have been hookers, but that doesn't mean that a Mormon bishop like me is doing blow and hookers. Stop it. Just because there were blow and hookers doesn't mean I indulged. No, never mind. Don't make a dirty joke, Joe. You're a spiritual leader. For his part, Ballard faces multiple lawsuits from women accusing him of sexual abuse and assault. They also accuse OUR of being complicit in enabling his alleged behavior. OUR terminated Ballard last June just before the release of Sound of Freedom, a movie loosely based on his anti-trafficking heroics that has earned hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. It's interesting that Tim Ballard's defense, again, through his attorney, Mark Eisenhut, who is his attorney. He is his attorney. People are attorneys. It's a fact. He is still, to the best of my knowledge, Tim Ballard's attorney, and may or may not be the father of a young man who has or is serving a mission where he is a companion with Tim Ballard's son. Maybe. I don't know. I actually don't know. That's the rumor I've heard. In addition, but that this guy, Mark Eisenhut, defended Tim Ballard before the highest court in the state of Utah to say that that Kelly Suarez, who's now in prison for 2 decades, is definitely not defamed by the movie Sound of Freedom, which Tim Ballard has said on multiple occasions that she is the villain in this movie. But his attorney, Mark Eisenhut, stood up and defended him in court, saying, and some of these days I'll show you the actual clip if anybody's interested in it. You can look it up. Mark Eisenhut, he's with a law firm called Call and Jensen, or Jensen and Call. He's an associate there, or a partner. And I think he's a partner there. And he is, and he stood up and defended Tim Ballard, saying this movie has nothing to do with Tim Ballard. It happens to use his name. He doesn't know the people who made it. I can show you clips. I can show you pictures. You can look it up. You can look up the pictures. There's a picture of Tim Ballard sitting next to the main producer of Sound of Freedom, besides Mel Gibson, who we've talked about, Eduardo Verástegui, the actor who is actually in the movie, and sitting next to Donald Trump and freaking Jim Caviezel at Donald Trump's golf resort in Bedminster, New Jersey. Oh, but he barely knows him. He doesn't even know it. How these things fly in Utah courts, I really don't know. In any event, so here we are. I am going to go ahead and pull down this horrifying thing. Well, do you guys want to hear any more of this? It's pretty dirty. They talk about Kira Lynch. Kira Lynch is another one of the women who has accused Tim Ballard of assault. It says that plaintiff Kira Lynch's allegation that Ballard pinned her down on the stairs of her home after she had cut his hair and raped her while she pleaded with him to stop. Lynch reported her case to law enforcement last October, despite initially denying an open records request, insisting there were no police reports related to the alleged attack. The Utah County Sheriff's Office provided the Salt Lake Tribune last week with an initial contact report in Lynch's case. The Tribune generally does not name alleged victims of sexual assault, but Lynch has agreed to go public with her accusations. This was 2 years ago, friends. Chad Colton, a spokesperson for Ballard, said the story keeps changing, but what remains the same is the relentless effort, focus, blah, 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 victim blaming. Anyways, but what's interesting on this and how it ends up here is that it says, she offers no evidence at all, he said, for her claims or much of the rest of this motion. The lawsuit contends that Ballard confessed the alleged assault to M. Russell Ballard, a now deceased senior apostle. He was the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who is not related to Tim Ballard, but at one time was a friendly advisor to Tim Ballard. President Ballard, quote, did not tell Tim Ballard to go to the police and report this horrible act. Whoa. I hate it when it jumps around like this. In the lawsuit alleges. Instead, it said he advised Tim Ballard to do a better job of obeying the rules of the couple's ruse. That Tim Ballard still maintains that President Ballard did endorse the couple's ruse and all of these activities, which is the story also they're still maintaining, and even to some extent, I would say, this is my interpretation of the events, even Catherine Ballard is maintaining that that the couple's ruse in their story, their draft of things, the couple's ruse was President Ballard's idea, and is apparently how Celeste Boris ends up with Tim Ballard's family blessing, his blessed anointing all over her skirt in what his attorney, one of his other attorneys, has now said is a consensual activity of some kind. I can't imagine what must go through Catherine Ballard's head. And the more I do, the more I think, I just don't know this woman. I should stop trying. In any event, the couples were supposed to act as intimate partners, blah, blah, blah. You guys know about the ruse, right? The couple's ruse. And then talking about how Tim Ballard got excommunicated. Okay, I'm going to switch over to another story here. You know, we're going to skip that. We're not. We're going to read it. I'm going to go over this real quickly, you guys. I'm sorry to have to drag this on, but because we do want to get back to the video clips. I do have another series of video clips I wanted to show you from Tim Ballard's Instagram, and why this is a particular this particularly infuriating to me right now is the timing of it all. I'm just going to say this may seem circumstantial. I had some interesting conversations with other people who are covering the case recently, and this is a part of it that's I'm kind of taking on as my personal interest in this. I'm going to go ahead and share this article with you. So that screen, move, share. Okay, so again, this is another article from Salt Lake Tribune. Okay, here we go. This is how it comes into the current. This case is still basically ongoing. This is an article that that was published officially, on April 2nd, so just a few days ago. Utah County prosecutors declined to charge Tim Ballard following sexual assault allegation. Ballard's former executive assistant told police the embattled anti-trafficking advocate had sexually assaulted her in 2023. The Utah County attorney has opted not to file criminal charges against Tim Ballard stemming from sexual assault allegations by a former assistant in 2023. I will say this. I'm sorry I know I'm bouncing around a bit. There are people who said I was drawing too many conclusions when I had my friend Chris Mortensen on the show, Captain Borax. You guys remember that? And I had said, whoa, sorry, StreamYard sucks. And I had said, and he had asked me about this Ted Bundy case. Remember I said a minute ago we were going to talk about Ted Bundy? So those of you who know, I started Hellfire Agency when I was covering the story about how Utah County Sheriff's Office has never made good on the fact that they have had the evidence. They at one point had all the evidence they needed to convict Ted Bundy of killing a girl in American Fort Canyon on Halloween night in 1974. I know it seems like it takes things away. The thing is this: you see this article that I'm showing you right now, that just came out about a week ago. Right about when that article dropped, right afterwards, the Utah County Sheriff's Office had an event just to talk about how they've decided after 50 years that Ted Bundy did kill Laura Ann Amy. And that they know this with DNA evidence. And I had my friend Chris Mortensen on the show, to talk about. I said, and he said, you guys saw, right? Those of you who are here. He sat here on this program and said, "What evidence?" I said, "You tell me, Chris. What have you been holding out on me?" If you don't know, Chris Mortensen is one of the best researchers into Ted Bundy that there are. He's actually an educator by profession. He's a musician, but he does such good rabbit hole dives that authors for Ted Bundy books have hired him to do research for them because he gets interviews with people that they couldn't get and tracks down evidence that they couldn't find. He's very good. Even I was like, what do you have? And he gets great stuff. I get great research, man. And for 50 years, the story has been that the Utah County Sheriff's Office either A, destroyed all the evidence that Bundy was guilty of killing Laura Amy in 1974, or that they lost it or threw it away, or they never one interview with the actual detective who collected all this evidence and marked it down, put it down in the an interview that Chris Mortensen did on Captain Borax on his channel, on YouTube channel, Captain Borax. Well, I don't know if he actually published that one with Owen Kornberg. I've listened to it. I have it somewhere. He asked Owen Kornberg, the detective, and he said the reality is basically on the DL, we never collected any evidence. And he's like, we just wrote that we did. Basically, is the way he kind of layered it in. In any event, the Utah County Sheriff's Office botched this case, and this 17-year-old girl was assaulted and murdered and left for dead in American Fort Canyon for almost a month before she was found, and by two hikers, which is the way that they used to say kids, BYU students doing Mary Jane up in the canyon. So right when this story drops about how the Utah Crime Lab has Tim Ballard's DNA on Celeste Boris's skirt, but they're not charging him with any crime, is right when suddenly they decided, we have decided, however, that Ted Bundy did kill Laura Amy. And now more and more people are saying, it's looking like Exmo Joe, your man Joe Rollins was right. The Utah County Sheriff's Office is just trying to divert attention away from the fact that they botched, that they seem to be throwing this Tim Ballard case away. And so they don't want to, and so they want to look like they actually solve crimes. So they try to solve a Ted Bundy crime. But to this date, and I've been watching, it appears they have not published what DNA they used, or they say they have a new technology that can suss out Ted Bundy's DNA to the exclusion of other people's DNA in the evidence related to Laura Amy. What evidence? Unless it's now that I'm thinking about it, and now I'm getting it. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to contact Chris about this. Maybe this is what they're trying to refer to. But I'm on the verge of calling them and to say, will you at least provide us with a statement before I have to go and file a grammar request about why grammar requests are like Utah's Freedom of Information Act that they never do anything with. I've asked for this evidence in the past. They haven't done it. They haven't gotten back to me with it. About Laura Amy's, can you just tell us what evidence did you get? Skin cells from under Laura Amy's fingernails? Did you get, according to the autopsy report, the medical examiner found semen in her vagina. They found her, they had a ring that belonged to her. They had a stocking, a pantyhose that was wrapped around her neck and used to strangle her, and that appears to have been how she died. But then that brings up a whole bunch of other things about Laura Amy's case. But to this day, it's just always been maintained that they don't have the evidence anymore. There was a time where they extracted her remains. The other law enforcement, the Utah County attorney, had asked Laura Amy's family to let them exhume her remains so that they could collect samples of her hair. But it was that was supposedly just to compare her hair to the hair to other locks of hair they found in Ted Bundy's Volkswagen when they finally tracked that down. But to the best of my knowledge, none of that had to do anything with the DNA of her killer, which sucks, because if the medical examiner is telling the truth, they had the semen of the person who assaulted her. They could have run that DNA. If it turns out that Utah County Sheriff's Office has had that DNA for 50 freaking years and they're not willing to say how they have it or where they had it or why they didn't ever send it in before, obviously that's going to be a bit of a disaster for them, I would think. So why it is that they suddenly brought this case in on almost to the day when this article comes out that they're not charging Tim Ballard, who is friends with Mike Smith, the Utah County Sheriff. I'm just saying, it feels fishy. I don't know anything for a fact on this case, but it looks fishy to all of us. Linden, by the way, is in Utah County. Utah County attorneys opted not to file criminal charges against Tim Ballard stemming from sexual assault allegations by a former assistant in 2023. In November 2023, the Linden Police Department confirmed Ballard's former executive assistant, Celeste Boris, had filed a police report alleging Ballard, who'd become an international celebrity as an anti-child trafficking crusader, had sexually assaulted her, and the department was investigating the claim. Ballard has denied any wrongdoing throughout. Again, as I've said many times before, everybody should be considered innocent until proven guilty, at least in the eyes of the law, and we should all honor that and respect that. The Utah County Attorney's Office, after reviewing the investigative material, opted this January not to file criminal charges, a spokesperson for the office told the Salt Lake Tribune. At this time, based upon the information submitted to our office, we have determined there is outside for a reasonable likelihood of success at trial, and we are declining the case, close quote. Christine Scott, chief of the Utah County Attorney's Major Crimes Unit, wrote in an email to Derek Clegg, the Linden police officer who investigated the case. By the way, in the incident report, Derek Clegg is the person, I believe, who compiled. His initials are included several times as DC in the record about how he got the warrant to have Tim Ballard come in and give a DNA sample. If my memory serves, and I have it, I could probably pull it up if it were important. He apparently brought Matt Cooper with him. I also brought his attorney, including an attorney whose name was DG, I believe his initials are included as DG, who I believe is either there on behalf of Mark Eisenhut or is at least part of the firm with Mark Eisenhut. Curious thing keeps coming up, these names. To wit, chief of blah, 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 Mark Eisenhut, an attorney for Ballard, said that Ballard and his lawyers, quote, are grateful that the investigators took their role seriously and, after reviewing the evidence, confirmed. Whoa, I hate it when it jumps around like that. There is no basis to pursue any charges against Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard has worked tirelessly to rescue and help children and women worldwide, and has repeatedly and confidently confirmed that he has never sexually assaulted anyone. Boris' attorney, Alan Mortensen, said Boris is, quote, deeply disappointed with the county attorney's decision, but it is, quote, not a finding that the results did not occur, close quote. I think that's pretty key. Tim Ballard does a lot of, I'm just gonna use some plain vernacular here. Tim Ballard does a lot of shit talking about Alan Mortensen, but Alan Mortensen's a good attorney, and he's on the case. They're still working on this. He is still, by the way, working on Kelly Suarez's case, who is in prison in Colombia again. Under circumstances that I think, frankly, all of us find suspicious. I know for a fact Cara Burrell does. If you watch the Timmy or listen to the Timmy Did What podcast, you know that. Ryan Fisher, the same. Pretty much all the podcasters, everybody covering the Tim Ballard cases agrees. The more you look into Kelly Suarez, the more it looks like she is innocent, and that Tim Ballard appears to have gotten a conviction for her in her case by some means. I don't want to say what they are. I don't know what they are, but it appears to me to be a miscarriage of justice, and I am not an attorney and certainly not an expert in Colombian law, But I can tell you this: it's no fun in a women's prison in Colombia, and I think this woman is innocent. It's my opinion. Uh, Alan Mortensen, by the way, and Alan Mortensen is still fighting for that woman who was, had brought him on as her attorney. In that case, where Mark Eisenhut eventually ended up arguing that Tim Ballard, did not defame her in the movie Sound of Freedom because he had nothing to do with the film at all, and the film's not even about him. And that's the attorney you're hearing about right now. Who is handsome, very competent, very smart, probably a very righteous man, righteous son of God. In any event, and allegedly the father of Tim Ballard, of one of Tim Ballard's his son's companions, in the mission field. I don't know. I don't know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. That may not be true, by the way. I just heard that as a rumor. Mortensen said the outcome is, quote unquote, not the final word on truth, and noted that physical evidence from the Utah County investigation and a judge's earlier decision to grant Boris a sexual violence protective order against Ballard are evidence an assault occurred. So even though they're not charging Ballard with any crimes, basically they have a judge's decision that the physical evidence on Celeste Boris's skirt shows that that she needs to be protected from Tim Ballard. And if she says that he raped her, well, then, whether or not that's the official decision on the matter, the decision is some kind of sexual assault that occurred. Guilty parties, have to be, that has to be decided in a court of law. But and it does. I agree with that. But to this point, that is the decision. That's Tim Ballard's DNA on there. Let's go and move on from this. Look. And let's watch a little bit of Tim Ballard crashing out. Tim Ballard has been crashing out for years now. I just want to show you a little bit from his Instagram account and why this brought me back to a name I haven't said so far. Two names I haven't said so far that keep coming up because of the timing of this, of these events that seem entirely unrelated. I'm just telling you that right off the top of my off the top of this part. This is my personal, what's the word? This is my personal crash out on Tim Ballard's crash out.
Starting in the war in Ukraine, and they're not looking to rescue 15, 16, 17-year-olds, though those need to be rescued too. We're talking about 4-year-olds. We're talking about 5-year-olds.
You accept this great honor.
This is going to be, I'm just going to jump around a little bit. I didn't have time to edit any of these clips, but we're going to go back to that clip here for a minute. He posts like clips from Gladiator and stuff with there, like clips from The Chosen and stuff.
Offered you.
In North Dakota, snowing. Spoke with the North Dakota Young Republicans at the University of Mary. Great event. And we talked about a lot of things. We talked about Epstein. And I want to reiterate something, guys. Look, everyone needs to be exposed. Everyone needs to go down that was part of this. But do not let the elites use Epstein as a false sense of security.
Okay. So I went back to covering Tim Ballard, which I had pretty much hoped I would never have to do again, because frankly, he does make me feel sick to my stomach a lot. And I had quite enjoyed my life without as much Tim Ballard in it. I had stopped covering Tim Ballard for a while now. And then Kara Burrell and Ryan Fisher. I've recently discovered I mispronounce Kara's name every time. Sorry, Nuance Hope. Kara and Ryan over at Timmy Did What podcast revealed this piece of information that that apparently Tim Ballard did an interview with a pro-Israel radio show / podcast where he answered in a surprising way when they asked him about the Epstein files, right as the Epstein files dropped, which was just a couple months ago, if you can remember that. I mean, of course, there was the first batch in December, and then this was around in January. this is important. In January, we started getting the really some more of the really damning stuff in the Epstein files, and a lot of it was around Jeffrey Epstein's work with the Israeli government, with Bibi Netanyahu's government, and with Ehud Barak, who was the predecessor of one of the predecessors of Bibi Netanyahu. We've covered a little bit about this, how like Steve Bannon, again, close associate of Tim Ballard's and Donald Trump's and Alan Dershowitz. And well, I don't know about his closeness to Alan Dershowitz actually, but he would get jobs for people in Steve Bannon's circle over at Breitbart News and places like that. He could get jobs for people in Bibi Netanyahu's government at the drop of a hat by just sending off a text message to Jeffrey Epstein. That's how close all of this is integrated, and how much work Epstein was doing with advocating for Netanyahu and the Likud party over there. So, what does that have to do with Tim Ballard? Maybe nothing. But this keeps coming up in Tim Ballard's coverage as he does more and more work in Israel, and keeps touting his closeness to Donald Trump, keeps touting his closeness to all this other stuff. But then when he gets called out back in January, I believe it was, and they asked him about Epstein files, and he seemed almost defensive, in which he had said, and I don't have the clip ready, I apologize for that. I have all this other stuff ready, where he said he doesn't feel like people should give as much credence to the Epstein files, I'm paraphrasing, because he knows somebody who's named in the Epstein files. He actually knows a few people. We're establishing this, by the way, with the Epstein-Ballard matrix. Anybody remember that? He says that he knows Alan Dershowitz, and that's where I was taken aback. I didn't know. I hadn't seen this when Nuance Ho and Ryan Fisher released it to the world, and I looked and I said, "Hot shit!" But they just got the good news. They just got the big news. Tim Ballard apparently knows Alan Dershowitz. How does Tim Ballard know Alan Dershowitz? Now, so far, I have posited theories, and they are only theories, that it may be through Glenn Beck, because Glenn Beck has said for a while that he apparently thinks of Alan Dershowitz as basically a dry Mormon. I don't think he uses that in that name. He basically talks about him like he's a golden contact, like he's so Mormon in most of his ways that he might as well just get baptized, or we're just going to baptize him when he dies anyways. Again, this is me paraphrasing Glenn Beck, but he has said words to this effect, that he thinks Alan Dershowitz is basically Mormon. And then it came out in Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, or at least one edition of it, I believe, that Alan Dershowitz, according to Virginia Giuffre, was one of the people that Epstein trafficked her to when she was underage. And so, or when she was young in any event. And so, and so then this came up, and Tim Ballard did this thing that some people are still doing for Tim Ballard. Not all Mormons. I'm surprised, actually, how many Mormon content creators are actually abandoning him now. I thought Greg Manson would never give up Ballard, and he has. I thought that Ward Radio would never give him up, and they have, as far as I can tell. The Stick of Joseph, I think I got these clips in here. Stick of Joseph, which wasn't really even a thing when the whole Ballard thing came up, the whole Jackson Hayden Ball. They apparently are now getting called out by Tim Ballard and falling apart, and I'm kind of here for it, but I'm also kind of sympathetic to them, because when Tim Ballard comes after you, it can get ugly. But the Mormons, there are some who still defend him with this same rhetoric that's a little familiar to us Exmos of, I know this man. I know that he is a man of God. I know that he is principled in all of his ways. And so if somebody tells me that he assaulted young girls, then that person is obviously evil and they are of the devil. That is, every ex-Mormon knows this as the Joseph Smith defense. This is exactly what they say about Joseph Smith. It's the same faith-driven system of defending the man. And and in that recording, I heard Tim Ballard do it about Alan Dershowitz. I said, "Oh my gosh." He doesn't mention Donald Trump, but he must feel the same way about Donald Trump. He must feel the same way about all these other people. Again, they're all in it. They all should be considered, at least before the law, innocent until proven guilty. But come on, I mean, nobody's standing by them with this. I mean, practically. I mean, aside from Melania Trump suddenly crashing out in the middle of nowhere, going rogue with some statement about how she didn't know, she hardly even knew Epstein, and that, and apparently we still have yet to see all of the reasoning behind why she suddenly felt compelled to do that and not tell her husband about it. I guess we'll find out.
Okay, because Epstein Island is not the worst Epstein Island. That's what kills me. Guys, dig deeper, look deeper. Don't let them use this. Watch Hidden War. Thank the Lord it's coming out in a couple weeks, Angel Studios, streaming. Because you're going to see Epstein Islands, okay, in Ecuador.
Okay, so this is in March 5th of this year. This was, what is that, 6 days ago? 5-6 days ago, okay? We're going to go backwards in time, back towards February, around February 8th, which is when that first clip that I showed you took place, where Matt Cooper, at an event, I've now decided, apparently it is an event, after going through Tim's Instagram, I'm going to go ahead and say it appears, I don't know this for a fact, to be an event that happened in Washington, D.C. sometime around February 11th. It was posted on February 8th. It appears to be that they were setting up a booth for AIPAC at an event that occurred in around February 11th in Washington, D.C. Still haven't nailed down which one it is, what it is. I think we'll figure it out pretty quickly. Any of you are welcome to look it up for me and save me a little trouble here. But I'm not that interested. I'm interested, but not that interested. But AIPAC apparently was setting up a booth, and they decided to let for free these two people from Zweda, or from representing the Druze community, and Matt Cooper representing Tim Ballard Foundation, to use this booth to record videos and or, by the context of what they're saying, use it at the event to fundraise for Tim Ballard's efforts in Israel and Syria with the Druze community. But it's interesting that while this is going on, okay, the most recent outcome is, after all these comments, and you're going to see this as we go through some videos on his Instagram, you'll see a lot of comments, especially from women, saying, "Tim, once upon a time, I liked you. Once upon a time, I bought into the whole Sound of Freedom thing." They'll say, not mainly women, and then Merrill, going through his Instagram and saying, "How can you defend Epstein? How can you defend the people in the Epstein files?" And so now this is only the most recent of posts where he is making clear that he's not trying to defend people in the Epstein files, although from that moment, from that interview until this moment in time now, I have yet to hear him say the name Dershowitz. So how do you know Dershowitz? How does Tim Ballard know Alan Dershowitz? Is it through AIPAC? Is it through the Druze community? What does, or is it through his Mormon contacts, his mutual associations? Is it through Steve Bannon? Is it through the Trump administration? How does Tim Ballard know Alan Dershowitz? And if it's not AIPAC, I'm going to be surprised at this point. Not to say that has anything to do with the Jewish people at large. I'm not one of those people.
In Mexico, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, starting in the war in Ukraine. And they're not looking to rescue 15, 16, 17-year-olds, though those need to be rescued too. We're talking about 4-year-olds. We're talking about 5-year-olds.
Okay, so let's skip on past this, but basically, this is the thing. Tim Ballard takes a real thing, dials it up a notch, provides no evidence for the dialing up of this case, and then tells everybody that anybody who disagrees with him or wants data to prove, that these claims, that they're working for the devil. And for me, that's sign number one. If you disagree with me, you must be working with the devil. Is sign number one that you're full of shit. And that's par for the course with our friend Timmy here. I think, and that's my personal opinion, does not necessarily represent the opinions of the Church of Korihor. It is my personal opinion. And I'll go to the mat with it.
Real, guys. Please wake up and don't let Epstein Island be a false sense of security to you. It's much, much worse. And please understand that we're in the end times. Okay? Do you know that Isaiah and the other prophets saw this day? Read Isaiah 22. Read.
So this is where
Epstein.
This is where things start to really piss me off. Beyond the fact that I feel that he is definitely, again, this is my feeling, he is definitely defending the Epstein, people in the Epstein files. Still, he needs to call out Donald Trump and say, if Donald Trump is guilty of these things, then he needs to make a formal statement here and start preparing to cut a few ties of his own. And I understand that means facing up and speaking truth to powerful men. And Tim Ballard doesn't do that until he has to. But until it's in his, convenient to him, like in the case with the Mormon Church. Well, we're going to get a chance to look at that here. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. But it's very convenient to, everything Tim Ballard does is very convenient. And the thing that pissed me off is I had a conversation with someone today. Do I do this yet? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go back in time through Tim Ballard's Instagram. And I'm going to say a name I haven't said yet in this. I haven't said in a while. And that name is Troy Abels. A couple of years ago, I did an episode of Underground, before it was Undergrounder, about how Pedro Flores, who is Simba in the movie Sound of Freedom, the little boy that Tim Ballard supposedly rescued on this island off the coast of Cartagena, that again, by the best evidence that anybody can see, appears to be the only people doing trafficking on that island in Cartagena, setting up a trafficking event where they were paying for sex with people from the island there, were Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes and their financier Paul Hutchinson, and who was played by Eduardo Verástegui in the movie Sound of Freedom. They didn't disrupt a trafficking ring. They basically created one. They created one for themselves. And is what it looks like by the appearance. Now, do I know that for a fact? I know what I see with my eyes, and what I hear with my ears, and the testimonies that come up, and so forth. And even now, nobody on that island that I know of has been found guilty of trafficking. And there's plenty of accusations going around from people who are experts in trafficking that the people what happened on that island off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia, was Tim Ballard creating a market for trafficking. That's the way people are saying it. That's their opinion, and that's opinion including of some people who are experts in counter trafficking.
And I want to reiterate something, guys. Look, everyone needs to be exposed. Everyone.
So, but I did an episode a while ago that Tim had sent two people onto the podcast, an LDS podcast called The Last Dispensation podcast with Troy Abels. Troy Abels was a conspiracy theorist. He was a close personal friend of Tim Ballard's. He's dead now. He passed away, if I remember correctly, on January 15th of this year. Rather suddenly for a man who was still in his 50s. It has been said for a while that he was sick, very sick. It's been pretty vague what his sickness was. And there are some rumors circulating around. I'm not going to repeat. You have to listen to the first time. I just I just want to say I wasn't looking to find reasons to shame Troy Abels, and I'm still not. And I'm being cautious about what I say so that people don't think I am shaming the memory of a dead man. I was just looking for to assure myself that he hadn't been killed by Tim Ballard. I know that seems like a lot, or that he hadn't been killed by anybody else, because it was so sudden, and it was so suddenly right in the middle of Tim Ballard bringing him back into the fold when, according to people in the Mormon creator space, YouTuber and podcaster space, it appears that Troy Abels had decided he was going to not associate with Tim Ballard anymore, in spite of the fact that he was pretty much the only podcaster who would get word out on Tim Ballard's behalf into the faithful Mormon community that was paying, as far as I can tell, was paying most of Tim Ballard's bills at the time. And not that Tim Ballard ran out of money, as we're seeing now. He appears to be flush with cash, at least on some level. That may be just appearances, but he's swimming in the money, it would seem to me. And Troy Abels suddenly died. And while he may have had various health conditions, his life was very hectic. And his embracing Tim Ballard and other Mormon podcasters and Mormon leaders ideology that says, oh, President Oaks has said this. Oh, President Holland has said this. President Nelson has warned us this. Every week at one point, every day, Mormon content's been dropping for about 4 or 5 years now at a level we have never seen before, of Mormons predicting that Jesus is coming back any day now, and it's the end of the world, it's the end times, and everybody needs to stock up on everything from food to ammunition to fuel, and because it is the end times, and the war is upon us, Armageddon is upon us, and Troy Abels was definitely one who bought into that, and then all of a sudden he was gone, and I went, I want to know for a fact, that Troy Abels died of natural causes. And every time I ask about this, I only know one person who claims to have at least some inside baseball on that question, and it appears that he didn't, at least not that he wasn't murdered. So I'm relieved at that, and then I'm just going to leave it at that. So I'm relieved at that. But it was so sus because, I mean, look, I'm just going to say this before we move on. I think I was probably the first person. You can look on Hellfire Agency's channel to offer my condolences and to publish a video that I considered not doing, but I felt compelled to do it. That it felt like it was the right thing to do, especially with the passing of Jeffrey R. Holland just recently. Before that, which again, sus. These things just fell into place at around the same time. When I had said the same thing, I'm like, look, my feelings about Jeffrey R. Holland are one, you all know. But for a short season, I am not going to say anything about the man at all in respect to his congregation and in respect to his family, who deserve our condolences. And I will say only this: he was a man, a human being who suffered like any one of us. And for his consciousness' sake, I'm glad that his suffering is over. And I effectively said the same thing about Troy Abels. And then a statement started coming out from other podcasters, Stephen Pinecker at Mormon Book Reviews, I think, and several others, friends, including friends of Troy's, and people who just happened to be covering the same things he was covering. There's an outpouring of love and support for his family, who went through a very hard time with his passing. Whatever you think about Troy Abels, it was a devastating thing, and sudden. And then Tim Ballard started making mention of it, and it felt very hollow and opportunistic, because he was the one that that Troy was making content with, and it was content that Troy was really going out on a limb for, because Tim Ballard had basically decided to go against the Mormon Church and start accusing the Mormon Church of SRA, or satanic and sexual ritual abuse, and leaning into that full on. Now, did sexual ritual abuse happen in the Mormon Church? Does it happen now? Yes, I'm convinced it does. Is it the stuff that's described in the Pace Memorandum, as Tim Ballard claims? I don't know. Doubtful. But is Greg Bowen associated with it? Is David Levitt associated with it? There's cheese down these rabbit holes where we're seeing that there is plausible reason to believe that there is some ritual abuse. But at the very least, with the trafficking, especially of girls and women in Mormon polygamy, both inside the mainstream church and outside the mainstream church, there's plenty of reason to understand that there is sexual ritual abuse happening in the Mormon world. And now, of course, he can't mention that specifically in that way, because it's not juicy. It's not the Sound of Freedom stuff that his audience wants. And he's obviously, it appears to me, in my opinion, he's worried about insulting what Mormons are still giving him money, or what people from this elite group of Max Place, club holders, where apparently, at least according to the article we were reading earlier, apparently part of how Sean Reyes was paying for these services at Max Place, not to any fault of Brady McIntyre, as a man who owns a business, deserves to make money. I'm not saying he's guilty of anything, but at least part of that appears to have been paid for by Operation Underground Railroad, by donors to Operation Underground Railroad, or out of the pocket of Tim Ballard himself. And apparently, according to these allegations, in exchange for setting up, allegedly, hookers and blow for the Attorney General, a man who, by the way, this is true, you can look it up. There's a Deseret News article you can look up about Sean Reyes, where they call him the Bishop of Bling. It's a weird story. The Mormons were very big on this idea that once upon a time, an attorney who was rising to prominence inside the Utah community was actually a kid from East LA or Los Angeles, and came up in, yeah. Anyways, the Bishop of Bling. He was a Mormon bishop. So at one point,
everyone needs to go down that was part of this.
Okay, so Epstein Island, he mentions this, and then he mentions all of this stuff, all of these, and this end times prophecy garbage. That's the same end times crap that drove Troy into a very seriously bad time in his life. I don't mean to insinuate that Troy took his life, by the way, but he made some very sketchy. It appears he made some pretty dark choices towards the end. To the best of my knowledge, he did not take his own life.
In North Dakota, Simba, that's Pedro from the Pedro filing. Do you know what happened to him after Sound of Freedom, when they tried to destroy us to make sure that the Sound of Freedom movie would never become a Sound of Freedom movement? Well, they have failed. And a part of that failure is the exposure that you will read about in the Pedro filing.
Okay, so we're supposedly still talking mainly these days about, let me just double check the timing on this. I wish, I really don't like the software. Okay, so this is recent. This isn't as recent as the clip we were just looking at. We're going backwards in time here. We're still apparently talking about Tim Ballard's work among the Druze people, because his work in Latin America is kind of floundering here. He's not doing so hot, as it turns out, in his case, in the work he's been doing in Argentina, the work he's been doing in Mexico, the work he's been doing in Colombia. His reputation is starting to catch up with him in all these different places, and it's starting to come around that this guy just is an opportunist who sells people on this religious narrative that feels frankly cult like, convinces all the conservative politicians in the area that this is going to be really good for your political campaigns. And then as soon as his story catches up with him, suddenly he has, oh, I have to be in Israel, I gotta go. And and nothing ever seems to catch up with him because he moves around. And that now he's talking about Pedro Flores again. Remember I said a minute ago, so Pedro Flores was the guy who was interviewed on Troy Abel's podcast when I was able to show I felt convincingly, back in 2024, when Hellfire Agency was new. I published an episode where I'm like, this guy, Troy Abels, just found out, and you can see the look on his face when he found out that Tim Ballard was a liar. Because this guy, Pedro Flores, went on Troy Abel's show, The Last Dispensation podcast, with Janet Russin, the infamous Mormon medium, Tim Ballard's psychic woman that supposedly could see Gardy Marty through the spirit, through the veil, where he was lost in Haiti/Dominican Republic. And it turns out that's not true. And when they discovered that wasn't true, that apparently is how Elizabeth Smart and her father, Ed Smart, decided, according to my interview with that I did with Jesse Stay around that same time, decided, and also, by the way, at the same time, you had the excellent reporting by Lynn Packer on the same subject, where they said it occurred to us that Tim Ballard had been lying the whole time. That same woman was there, an associate and a friend of Pedro Flores, there to act as his translator before people realized, apparently, especially Troy, that Pedro Flores speaks fucking English. And he's sitting there having a conversation with them, and his English, you can see and hear, he's catching up. He's pretty much catching everything that's going on in this conversation as she translates. It's kind of so interprets for him on the fly because she speaks Spanish. And Pedro Flores, the little boy who supposedly is Simba in the movie Sound of Freedom, the one that Tim Ballard's character defends from the traffickers by saying, no, you don't want this one, he's mine. That boy Simba, that is still working with the Tim Ballard Foundation, answers Troy Abel's question when Troy Abels asks him. He says, that day in Cartagena that we see in the movie, both in the movie, by the way, Sound of Freedom, and also in the movie The Abolitionists, the documentary The Abolitionists. We'll mention Greg Mullen and all that business. They don't have time for that. How long had you been in trafficking? Because in the movie, the kids were picked up and kidnapped by a woman supposedly given to be this Kelly Suarez, even though Mark Eisenhut on Tim Ballard's part has defended, saying she's got nothing to do with it, and because the story is complete fiction. But Tim Ballard, you don't hear him saying that way. I don't hear him saying it that way. Apparently, he went around posing as a talent scout and kidnapping children from these countries all over Latin America without anybody noticing that, without these parents noticing that their kids never came home after they went to audition for some kind of talent show or some kind of talent agency. And, and Pedro Flores looks at Troy Abels, who's very clearly believing the Sound of Freedom narrative and Tim Ballard's narrative, because Tim Ballard did tell that story on podcasts. There are shows, I forget the name of the show, but there's a show where he tells the story of Sound of Freedom exactly, to a T, exactly the way it happens as his personal story, that this was his story, that it happened the way it's depicted in the movie. And it was lies. It was lies and lies and lies. And Troy Abels looks at Pedro Flores right in his eyeballs as Pedro Flores says, just that day. And Troy says, I'm sorry, how long had you been trafficked? And he said, just that day, in Spanish. As a matter of fact, I think he even repeated it in English, if I remember correctly. It's been a while now. And you can see in Troy Abel's face as he realizes that changes everything. This boy, Pedro Flores, wasn't kidnapped in Honduras and taken to Colombia. He wasn't kidnapped in Mexico and then shipped in a shipping container, for, marketed as Wayfair products or something like that. None of that happened, man. That boy that boy, 17 years old, woke up in his bed in Cartagena that morning and went to a party. He said in interviews after the sting operation concluded that he's on the record as having said that he and his boyfriend wanted to go to the party because they had been told that they would get paid to drink and to eat and to party on this private island, which is something they wouldn't have ever been able to do, and then gone and well, I don't know about that satanic song. He would dress very effeminate, if that's what you're asking, when he was a teenager. That they went to this party, but that they were told they didn't have to have sex with anybody to get paid a lot of money for the time. I forget the exact amount in pesos that it was, but it was like hundreds of dollars, the equivalent of hundreds of dollars each, of apparently either Paul Hutchinson's money or other donors to Operation Underground Railroad money. And none of these people, most of whom were adults by the appearances of it, who could pass as younger people, including Kelly Suarez, who was like 20 at the time, and still maintains through her attorneys that she was told that if she could make herself pass as if she were underage, because her skin was so dark, that Paul Hutchinson, Pablo in the movie, would want to sleep with her, and she had hopes. She said back then that he would buy sex with her, who she was an adult, which is not illegal in Colombia. When prostitution is not illegal in Colombia, and that she would get to have sex with him. He would, and she hoped to make him either fall in love with her or at least start a kind of or a kind of sugar daddy relationship with her, so that she could get money from this guy who is a billionaire, a Mormon billionaire from Utah, and hopefully tell him, look, there's no reason for us to disrupt your life in the United States. A little bit of money would pull me and my mother out of poverty, and then she would get herself a boyfriend who could change her life because she had been told by Tim Ballard's people and by Operation Underground Railroad's operatives, apparently, by her testimonies, I understand it, that Pablo was frustrated because he had this fantasy nobody could fulfill for him of being with a minor who was a girl who was black, and that she was the darkest person they had found, the person with the darkest complexion they had found, and she looked as if she could pass for a younger person. And so in the movie, you can see that she dresses herself up, and somebody posing as Kelly Suarez, and it may be Kelly, I don't know, contacted me on TikTok a couple of years ago. I still haven't verified that this is really her. And we emailed, sent a couple of emails back and forth when I was trying to figure out how much of the story was true, and told somebody who had agreed at one point to be interviewed on camera with me, but that never actually happened, said in the movie you can see in The Abolitionist that she wore a headband and her hair in a style, and she wore clothes in a style specifically to make herself look as much like a little girl as possible, in hopes of luring Pablo into sleeping with her and paying her for sex. And whereas Pedro says from the beginning he and his boyfriend never intended to have sex with anybody on the island, and as far as he knew, pretty much everybody on that island apart from him were adults. And then as that all came apart, and then what did does appear to have happened is following that sting operation in Cartagena, is that they never actually successfully charged any of these people with trafficking, including Kelly Suarez, who in the end was basically charged with solicitation, with pimping. And for a comment that she had made, which she says was about herself, but then was interpreted as being, no, it's not about you. That's not a comment you made about yourself. There's a comment made about this other person. And for this comment, she got like 20 years in prison. And she still maintains, and it still seems to me plausible that she's telling the truth, that she wasn't talking about that girl. She was talking about herself, and then somebody else, and she didn't even know this girl that they claimed she was talking about. In any event, he's still making all of this into when Celeste Boris or Kira Lynch or any of these women make allegations against him, it's because they work for the other people. They work for the traffickers, or they work with the Prince of Darkness. They work for the evil one, because it's the end times, and that's why he's got to go to Syria to save Drew's people. A thing that, as far as I can tell, he's never actually done. Again, we still don't have any proof that he's actually done anything of actual value there. In any event,
Flores is Simba. What happened in the aftermath of Son of Freedom?
Do you see that little boy there? Let me show this again. You see that little boy in that clip? That's supposedly this 17-year-old Pedro.
It's not the worst Epstein Island. Okay, one worse than that. You saw the Son of Freedom, that island. Remember the little boy, Simba? That's Pedro from the Pedro filing. Do you know?
That boy is 17 years old. That child there, that boy is 11 at most. This is the dishonesty. It makes total sense to me that Mormons finally turned on this guy way later than they should have. They gave him a solid decade of their trust, and he, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, he abused it, and I mean, and he just goes on.
You know what happened to him after Sound of Freedom, when they tried to destroy us to make sure that the Sound of Freedom movie would never become a Sound of Freedom movement?
Just a recap on this, and he'll mention it here. As a matter of fact, let's skip past this part. Take my word for it. He then basically goes on to basically accuse Disney of trying to kill the movie Sound of Freedom, because they're working with the devil, they're working with the traffickers, they're working for the evil ones, and it's because it's a struggle between good and evil, and that's why he's got to go to Syria and rescue people. What the fuck you want about now, Tim? It's infuriating. It's like, and by the way, once again, Pedro Flores didn't say that. Now there's another clip apparently since then. Pedro Flores has said something else. I haven't watched that one yet. I'm telling you, when Troy Abels, I saw the light in his eyes go out. Not literally go out. I saw in his eyes in that interview that he had lost trust in Tim Ballard. That was the moment when I went there. The house of cards is gonna come down. And then a statement was signed by Pedro Flores attesting. I've seen pictures of this statement in any event. Apparently it is real, where he filled out a statement saying that he never had any contact with Kelly Joanna Suarez at any kind, that he did attend an event where he was promised that he could get paid to dance, but he wouldn't be required to have sex with anybody, but that if he was willing to have sex with the gringos, with the Americans, that he would get paid extra, that he and his boyfriend had shown up to the party and on the island with no intention whatsoever of having sex with anybody, because it was enough money to make it worth their while just to go and dance. And if these Americans wanted to dance and pretend like they were young again, they didn't see any problem with that. But that he was 17 years old, and that as far as he knew, everybody else was older. And, and then apparently the rumor is that Pedro now has made other statements that are contradictory.
Well, they have failed. And a part of that failure is the exposure that you will read about in the Pedro filing. Pedro Flores is Simba. What happened in the aftermath of Son of Freedom was these lawfare warriors who set out to destroy our child rescue mission. Okay, it was led by attorneys Alan Mortensen and Suzette Rasmussen, along with one of the most evil creatures that you'll ever come across, of a traitor, a former friend, a former sister, a former operator named Celeste Boris. They went down to Colombia. Go see what they did to him. They used flattery. They used bullying when that didn't work, when the flattery didn't work. Ultimately, they resorted to a bribery.
The B-roll is not on point to me. All right. Oh, here are white people with heart hands. That represents bribery. Man, you need a new editor. Don't call me. But that being said, somebody else pay me to edit videos for them because I could use a little extra work right now. Anyway, so this is where things start to, we go backwards in time here, and it starts to really piss me off because he starts to blame Alan Mortensen, who all he's trying to do is represent his clients. Suzette Rasmussen, all she's trying to do is represent her clients, who all have really good cases in the opinions. Everybody I know who hears the facts of the case, who hears the allegations of the case, and the evidence, I think, even though Utah courts have been throwing them out or, saying, well, Celeste Boris worked for Tim Ballard when she collected these things. So technically she was spying on him by collecting them, by collecting an email where Tom Harrison, the guy who wrote or is the subject of Visions of Glory, the book that apparently radicalized Chad and Lori Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell to do what they did. That guy apparently gave Tim Ballard a special blessing, reasserting to him that the blessing that M. Russell Ballard, president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the actual Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, had promised him that he was going to become a senator. He was going to become a senator from the state of Utah, that he was going to become president of the United States, and that he was going to become the next prophet of the Mormon Church. All of those things. And that it was prophecy. And that's when people started, you have these Mormons coalescing around him saying, this guy's the next prophet. He's the next president. He's, the successor to Donald Trump in their minds at that time. This is it. This is the white horse prophecy. It's Joseph Smith saying that in the end times, the Constitution would hang would hang by, as it were, by a thread, and the elders of Zion, the Mormon priesthood, would have to ride to the rescue and save America from collapse. It was all going to be Tim Ballard. And then, lo and behold, the Big 15, apart from M. Russell Ballard, turned against him. Gee, who could have seen that coming? But there's a letter from Tom Harrison basically affirming all of that. That was in Tim Ballard's email on a computer that Celeste Boris allegedly had in her possession because she worked for him. And then because she was working as his executive assistant at the time, that letter apparently became inadmissible in court. And it's just like, okay, maybe my understanding of the civil rules of procedure is not, great. I'm not an attorney or anything, but it's another one of these cases where the evidence is strong, but for technical reasons or I would say there's got to be some legal basis to say some of these judges are not making the decisions that seem reasonably sound. Maybe I'm wrong, and that's a legal opinion that's not warranted by any kind of education on the subject. I'm not an attorney.
They came after him. The cartels came after him. They exposed him. Okay, Alan Mortensen actually exposed him publicly, which is another felony in Colombia. And we had to go rescue him again. It's the craziest story. Read.
No. According to Janet Rasmussen, Tim Ballard, you're welcome to contact me and correct me on this record. This is the way I understand it. According to Janet Rasmussen, she had talked to, Tim Ballard had talked to both her and to Pedro Flores when Pedro agreed to go on the Last Dispensation podcast and defend Tim. And he, on that podcast, went on there talking about his organization, Tejiendo Sueños, which is which in Spanish means weaving dreams. Apparently, he says is an organization that provides employment and opportunities for, particularly for women who are victims of trafficking in Colombia. And he went on there to promote Tejiendo Sueños with Janet Russin and on Troy Abel's podcast as three. I think all three of those people. I think he is also Mormon now, Pedro. Basically, three Mormons talking about. I may be wrong about Pedro's having converted to Mormonism, but I'm pretty sure he did. Three Mormons talking, to a Mormon audience about how good Tim Ballard was and about how Operation Underground Railroad is so marvelous and how Sound of Freedom is true, and defending Tim Ballard. And in defending Tim Ballard, happened to mention, I woke up in my bed that morning. I'd never been trafficked a day in my life, but he said it was very traumatic as he was being, as he realized that he was being trafficked. And they said, and he's like, okay, what was that moment? Troy's asking him, what was that moment? And he said, yeah, when we were being paraded in front of the Americans. And I realized that it was like a meat market. It was like a show. And I felt very objectified. And I've had to be in therapy ever since. And Tim Ballard has helped me with that. Is the way it was. I don't remember the exact way he phrased it, but the way he leaves it and the way that I walked away with it was Tim Ballard basically paid for, and or OUR or somebody connected to Tim Ballard has been paying for him to go to therapy. He said for a decade, ever since that moment, that he was made to feel as if he was objectified, made to feel as if he was being, presented for, and in that moment, he felt like he was being trafficked. By whom? By Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes and their operatives at Operation Underground Railroad, by the way he described it. I'm not an attorney, but you can watch the interview. I think Troy Abels still has it up, even though at one point, Troy Abels started to post shorts and videos on his channel on YouTube, the Last Dispensation podcast, saying, you guys need to stop trying to contact me, telling me to stop doing projects with Tim Ballard. He's my friend. I'm going to stand with him. And right now he's being attacked by these women who are trying to shut down his anti-trafficking work. I'm going to stand by him. I'm going to be his man to the end. This is the end times, blah, 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 blah. He bought into the whole narrative. And then one day to the next, I got a text message. I'm going to say this again. Steve and I, we feed each other. Steve Pinecker at Mormon Book Reviews sent me a text and said, Troy Abels just took Last Dispensation down. I said, what do you mean down? And he said, look, I went to the podcast, and sure enough, every video was gone. And I went, shit, what happened? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, Steve, because he was closer, he had more inroads to Troy than I did. I tried to contact Janet Russin. I tried to contact Troy Abels. I sent messages saying, look, I know that you don't consider me a friend, and I'm covering the Tim Ballard thing. But if you're distancing yourself from Tim Ballard, I want the interview. I want to talk to you. I will be nice to you. I will be generous to you. I will be respectful. I won't say one anti-Mormon thing. I will be your best friend, buddy. I want that interview. I want to know what was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I got nothing. I don't expect it. And I shouldn't have expected otherwise, frankly. It was a Hail Mary pass, if you will. But every once in a while I do those, and I get it. I get results. But my understanding is, to this day, nobody got the conclusive word from Troy Abels on what motivated him to take his whole podcast down. But the Tim Ballard stuff didn't come back for a while. And then Tim Ballard started to reemerge after the time period was elapsing where he could be readmitted to the Mormon Church after his excommunication. And when it was clear that Tim Ballard was not going to get rebaptized, the church was done with him. They didn't want anything to do with him. That's when Tim started to make content and start, making, appearing at meetings and things where he seemed to be starting to probe the waters on accusing the Mormon Church of not wanting him to be a member of the church anymore, because they knew And at that time, President Ballard had passed. President M. Russell Ballard, supposedly the guy who had prophesied at least part of this prophecy that Tim Ballard was going to become president of both of the United States and also of the Mormon Church. That President Ballard had passed, and that his last command, his parting command to and prophecy for Tim was to go and investigate the Pace Memorandum and the Mormons' satanic panic in the 90s and get to the bottom of exactly how many children were abused in satanic rituals in the Mormon Church, in the Mormon community back in the 90s. And that now that he was kicked out of the church, now he's been excommunicated from the church, now he's finally at liberty to actually do that. And he will drop hints to that along the way. So how that comes to be Alan Mortenson's problem or Suzette Rasmussen's problem is just spinning your wheels, Tim. I mean, look, these people are representing their clients, and their clients, we're all convinced, I'm convinced that whatever credence is being given to them by Utah's legal system or Columbia's, they're not getting their day in court, in my opinion. But, and again, I'm not an attorney. Anyway, let me get to the end of this here. Let's skip ahead to some of these other posts. Okay, so this one is from, shoot. Oh, here, I bet I can blow up the whole thing. Oh, for hell's sake. I don't like this software. If I mentioned that. Well, anyways, this is like going back to like March, etc. This is going back to February, getting closer and closer to February 8th or February 11th, which is when this event happened apparently in Washington, D.C. It may have happened in California, but it appears it's Washington, D.C., and we'll see why here in a minute. And where at an AIPAC booth, Matt Cooper and Tim Ballard's associates from the Druze community were presenting in such a way that it looks like Matt Cooper is being set up so that he can speak on behalf of the Tim Ballard Foundation as an official representative.
If you want to get the whole context of what this Operation Millstone is all about, yes, the Jewish people are part of it because the same people who tried to destroy my mission have also been complicit in letting their defamation hurt the Jewish people. Anyway, I told you yesterday that I was going to do another tribute to Troy Abels, who, unlike the dishonest podcasters who defamed me, Eric Mustos, Greg Mattson, and others, Troy Abels did his homework. You know, it's funny.
You cut me real deep right there, Timmy. No mention of Nuance-O. No mention of Ryan Fisher. What about your boy X-Mo Joe? What am I, chopped liver? What am I, some ex-Mormon Satanas? What am I, some Korah whore?
Mustos called Troy at one point and said, I can help you out of this. He was trying to get him to go on his...
Okay. That much is probably true, from what I understand. Greg Mattson at Quick Media apparently did contact Troy Abels and tell him to not have any association with Tim Ballard. And that appears to be around the time, and I don't have inside track on this. I only know what I'm hearing from secondhand sources. So just take this with a grain of salt. That it was around when Greg Mattson started to turn on Tim Ballard, because Tim Ballard was turning on the church. What do you expect? They follow the prophet. It's like the one thing Mormons do. And when Greg Mattson turned on Ballard and that he started contacting Troy Abels, the last Mormon podcaster I know of that was still platforming Tim Ballard and telling him, look, you don't want to go down with this guy. He was a false prophet. Is the way I understand Greg Mattson was saying it. I mean, he basically was saying that publicly. He was embarrassed that he ever put up with Tim Ballard's obvious lies. And so this much, Tim Ballard may actually be mixing some truth in with his lies.
And Troy was like, what are you talking about? This guy's not honest, okay? Mustos is not honest. Wait till you find out what Salt Lake PD said about him. And wait till you find out about the text messages that he...
Okay. Eric Moutsos was the first of them, the first of the Mormons that I can recall, content creators, to turn on Tim Ballard. If you want to know what the Salt Lake Police Department says about him, it's my understanding still is that the opinion of Eric Moutsos is that he's a homophobic a-hole. He basically ended up getting fired from the Salt Lake police force, or from one of the police departments up there, because he refused to work security at an event where they would be protecting protesters who were protesting for gay rights, and said that he wouldn't do it because it conflicted with his religious values to protect gay people effectively. And that's when it was made clear to him this was just one more in a long string of prejudiced things that he'd said and did that were getting him into trouble. My understanding is that he had like formal write-ups of other trouble. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head if I ever knew, but that's what I've heard. And that's when he quit. Then he became this conservative podcaster and very far, right-wing fringe. And he started platforming Tim Ballard and interviewing Tim Ballard and buying into Tim Ballard's bullshit until people inside Tim Ballard's orbit started approaching him and saying, you know what he does to women? Do you know what he does? Do you know he's not rescued any children? Do you realize that he is actually potentially trafficking the people who work for him? That allegedly, that is what Eric Moutsos heard from people. And here you have this guy who wouldn't march, who wouldn't stand on a sidewalk to protect gay people in Salt Lake City, and that which ultimately apparently leads to his being dismissed or leaving the Salt Lake police force. And that appears to be what Tim Ballard is alluding to. If not, then it must be something else. Then that I don't know. That guy is the guy who winds up turning his back on Ballard and saying, this guy is a liar. He's not telling us the truth. I mean, you lose Eric Moutsos, man. Your cult is in trouble, man.
Was sending, there's projection. It's called projection. When you're the one doing things, you like to blame others. But anyway, Moutsos' number one informant, his source of information, Krista Casey, and David Jacobs, those are his sources, okay? And they are going to go either to jail or lose everything. And Moutsos people aren't going to trust him. You shouldn't trust him. I want you to...
I mean, the fact that Tim Ballard talks about other people defaming him is wild to me when he makes statements like that. He's going to lose everything. You don't trust him. He's not an honest person. Accusing people of working for the devil because they blew the whistle on your operations. Even if those people were lying, prove it. Don't go off and say, well, they're obviously working for traffickers and they don't want me. They want to stop my work in Syria, when not a one of these people, as far as I'm aware, not a one of these people had anything to say or anything to reveal about Tim Ballard's work in Syria.
Listen now to Troy Abels, who is the opposite of someone like Eric Moutsos or Greg Mattson, okay? Actually does their homework, actually cares about truth, cares about children. And I offered Eric Moutsos the opportunity to come talk to me. I did. He was willing to drive all the way up from St. George or wherever he lives to try to convince my team that I was bad. And then when my team said, why don't you come talk to Tim? Be Matthew 18 compliant. Refused the offer. What does that tell you about his integrity, his honor?
That he was trying to avoid the appearance of evil. Tim, you were Mormon long enough to know this, man. Okay. As far as I know, so at least a percentage of that, something of that is true. But as far as it being some coordinated effort in in trying to expose him because they want trafficking to continue, you're going to have to come up with a lot better claims than that. Frankly, it just astounds me that there isn't a federal case or some kind of case that's that makes it out of the state of Utah and maybe gets a better chance at getting a fair hearing. That accuses Tim Ballard of some kind of either defamation or some kind of about lying about these people. I mean, he is saying some pretty strong things with the confidence of a man who has seen pretty much every lawsuit against him either dropped because the person ran out of money to continue to pay lawyers, or as I understand it, or a case that got thrown out of a court case by a Utah judge in a way that left everybody I know of wagging our heads going, "Are you kidding me?" Maybe we're just not attorneys and we don't understand how the law works, but you see things these things happen here that just don't seem. It seems like a Utah thing.
Honesty. But this is his great informant, his source is Krista Casey. Listen to the breakdown that Troy Abels gave. Here it goes. So listen to the whole story. It's very accurate. It's Matthew 18 compliant, and it tells you who Krista Casey is, and by extension tells you who David Jacobs is, and Eric Bustos is, and everybody else who just goes along with whatever story makes them popular, as opposed to just standing for truth, which matters, because this truth protects children and keeps them.
Okay. So as a general rule of thumb, we're going to skip ahead because this is starting to get boring. It's a good rule of thumb. I mean, any call me out, tell me I'm wrong, especially any women out there. This may be a little bit toxic. I apologize. Any woman who's in the dating world will tell you that a man who is happy to tell you that all of his exes are crazy, you don't want to date. Okay? Honest people don't tell people, "Look in my eyes." You know I can't lie. Someone can't look you in the eyes and lie like I'm looking in your eyes. Someone look in your eyes and lie like this. I saw Tim Ballard do that with the Druze community. He has videos promoting his work among the Druze where he looks at a guy in the eyes and he says, "Look at my eyes. I have Druze eyes," he says. What does that even mean? "I have Druze eyes." And he says, Druze cannot lie. That's Vulcans, Tim. What are you on about? And then he starts saying, that Messiah sent me. He tells people this. That Messiah sent me. He takes everything Mormon, repackages it with new vocabulary, with the vocabulary of this religious community, of this ethno-religious community, and he goes out there, and as long as those people see that the cameras are rolling, they roll with it. "Oh, thank you so much. Thank God for you." And then he takes it out and he uses it to raise money. It's weird,
click
dude.
Off this. It's because there's a lot to talk about. Welcome to the last dispensation. You're living in it.
Troy Abels. Poor guy. Rest in reason, guy.
Now, let me be very clear, brothers and sisters, from my heart. I love the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love the good things about it. I want 99.9% of my content to be about good, uplifting preparations for the Savior's arrival, covenant keeping, covenant making, everything that our Savior wants us to know, things that we're learning from the scriptures, all good things, what the leaders are saying. But there,
Unfortunately, we got to talk about Tim Ballard. Yeah, we're gonna skip ahead here, but you get the flavor of it. Okay, so let's get down to Let's get down to brass tacks. Okay, I guess this is the last post. Let me
out all
sure.
The court documents, and I have the complaint. I have Pedro Flores's complaint, and we're gonna go through it. And some.
Okay, in any event. Oh no, I remember. There's one more. I'm like, I know there was one more. Okay, there's one more clip. Stay with me, friends. We got one more. So this goes back to the very original video, the earliest video. This one happened right after. Let's send Ballard's rants. This happened right after Troy Abel suddenly passed away in January. And Tim Ballard posted that video. Did I already show this video? I think I already actually showed the video at the top. Well, screw it then. I won't do it. Anyway, yep. Screw it. We won't do it. Anyway, but that was when Tim Ballard posted this video saying, I want to mark. He said something to the effect of, I want to mark that Troy Abel's passed away. And if you haven't done it yet, and it's so sad, blah, blah, blah. If you haven't done it yet, you should see my Safe House interview with him, which is an interview where he purports to be in a safe house near or in Zweda or in Syria while they are under attack. And that during this interview, he has to run, he has to go because we're being informed we have to move right now. And everything about this interview is sus. I mean, it looks like it looks fake. It sounds fake. And of course, but Troy bought into it. And it's there that he does more of his victim complex stuff about how every woman who has accused him of assaulting her, every former employee who has come out against him saying that he is lying when he says that he was rescuing children, that he's lying about that the movie Sound of Freedom is pure bullshit. That every person who has exposed him, every whistleblower must be crazy, must be working for the traffickers, and must be working for the devil, and forgotten or not forgotten. More importantly, that this is a world where we are in a struggle for the end times between good and evil, between right and wrong, between the devil and the Lord, and then comes out with some story about how everybody who's hearing me knows I'm telling the truth. And you know it because you feel it in your heart with exactly the same language that he just, as soon as the Epstein files dropped, and he got called out on it because he's the anti-trafficking guy. You're the Sound of Freedom guy, dude. Tell us about the Epstein files. And he's like, well, my friend, or this guy I know and have known for years and have a lot of respect for, Alan Dershowitz, was named in the files. Yeah, a lot, by the way. And I know for a fact that I know in my heart of hearts that he's innocent, therefore he is. And we're supposed to not conclude from that he means for everybody to feel that way about him. Give me the Joseph Smith pass is basically where it comes down to. So, anyways, that's that long story. Now, I conclude on this point about Andy Chud and Brady McIntyre and these guys that I found their Facebook page and when I was looking down this Matt Cooper rabbit hole. Is it just a coincidence, or is there something about these individuals that has connected Tim Ballard to AIPAC so that he can start raising money on a mass scale for his work? And that he's, is it just coincidence? I said at the start, and I'm saying again, I think it mostly is just coincidence. But what we see is that it did substantiate more. What it appears to me to substantiate more that people aren't paying enough attention to the specific allegations being made by Kira Lynch, being made by Celeste Boris, and these others, because there's still some people, especially some Mormons and some supporters of Tim Ballard's from the past, who are still buying into this rhetoric that the judges have thrown out all these cases against Tim Ballard and as being unwarranted or baseless, and that's not the case. And even in the cases where it's something like that, where it's close to something like that, there's good reason to suspect that those judges were wrong. Now, legally speaking, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, including Tim Ballard, and I never said otherwise. But, and again, I've named some people by name. I just wanted to be clear in stating, not only did I not say that those people were guilty of any kind of wrongdoing or any kind of crime, but I have now stated multiple times on this broadcast, I think they're probably totally innocent. I don't particularly care for all of their views, but that's not a crime, and I could be wrong. But when somebody says, "Oh, can you believe that Celeste Boris tried to convince us all that Tim Ballard, tried to hook up Sean Reyes with hookers and blow in an exclusive penthouse in Salt Lake City"? Can you believe that? Tim Ballard, Sean Reyes, members of the church. And when that's how it's treated, I just want to be clear so that we should all be informed on this. There is a skirt with Tim Ballard's baby gravy on it. His attorney, at least one of his attorneys has affirmed it is his baby gravy on it, and that it had to do with a sexual encounter with his assistant that was consensual in their arguments, that a judge decided was enough to conclude that Celeste Boris needed to be protected from Tim Ballard, specifically with a protection order meant to protect victims of sexual assault. And while that Utah County apparently is not going to charge him with a crime, and apparently Salt Lake County is not going to do it either. And apparently it's not to be mentioned that Tim Ballard allegedly has close connections inside law enforcement in both of these counties and all throughout Utah, and then all throughout the world. Apparently that's supposed to be a big nothing burger, but I mean, does it ever deserve to not be mentioned that these guys are friends? And that as soon as the allegations started to accelerate and Tim Ballard's attorney actually had to start positioning a story about, yes, that's Tim Ballard's semen. Yes, that is his assistant's skirt. Yes, there is sex involved, but it wasn't sexual assault, because this is how they rescue people from trafficking. That deserves to not be forgotten. Whatever's decided in a court of law, that deserves to not be forgotten. And we should always consider everybody to be innocent until proven guilty, which Tim Ballard probably is innocent. How crazy was that, though? So, for those of you who were here when the Adderall hit strong somewhere in the 2 hour and 15 minutes mark, blessings to you, because that probably was when it started to get really good. But those clips are freaky, right? You guys want to see a couple of weird things before we close up here? I'm just going to show you some weird things. It's just going to happen because it's my damn show, and I have so much more material I didn't show you. How about this one? Oink. Okay. Those of you who are able to look at it. Sorry, Lisa. I'll read it out loud in case Lisa's working. This is from the incident report with where Tim Ballard with the Utah County Sheriff's Office last year. Was this last year? Yeah, last year got a warrant to have Tim Ballard come in and give a DNA swab. And quote, I asked DG, that's one of Tim Ballard's lawyers, I forget his name, if Tim would like to make a statement on how his semen was and to get on Celeste's skirt. Police reports. I learned this the hard way. They're worse than doctor's notes. DG, again, that's Tim Ballard, one of Tim Ballard's attorneys, told me the semen got there through a consensual sexual encounter. DG said Tim and Celeste did have sexual encounters while on operations. Kitty Cat, you listen to this? DG said to Tim's recollection, these encounters took place in other countries. Okay, so not in Linden. So obviously it can't be sexual assault. I mean, international waters, right? That's not how it works, my guy. Okay, might mean that you have to appeal to a different jurisdiction, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't sex, and it doesn't mean that the sex was consensual. DG told me that at this time, Tim would not be giving an interview to law enforcement. Yeah, I bet. So there's one. I have a few more from this. Go ahead and bail on that. Pull up image file. Mhm. This is also from that incident report. Alan Mortensen and respondent Timothy Blaine Ballard, was represented by counsel Mark Eisenhut. Oh, this is the end of another sentence. Alan Mortensen, comma, and respondent Timothy Blaine Ballard, Mr. Ballard, was represented by counsel Mark Eisenhut. Same guy that I was telling you earlier defended him by saying that the movie Sound of Freedom has nothing to do with Tim Ballard and he had nothing to do with the movie. The Honorable Judge Sanchez heard evidence de novo. Tyson Wright, Celeste Boris, and Timothy Ballard were called as petitioner's witnesses. Each witness was cross-examined. Respondent called Matthew Cooper and Janet Russin as witnesses. I did mention that Matthew Cooper was there. I forgot that Janet Russin were called as witnesses for Tim Ballard. Each witness was cross-examined. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Joe. Each witness was cross-examined. Respondent proffered the testimony of Todd and Tiffany Tuller, Brandy Smith, Brian Williamson, and Alex Acosta. At the end of the hearing, the Honorable Judge Sanchez issued a ruling based upon a preponderance of the evidence. I'm sorry, I apologize. This is from the matter. This is from the court case where they were determining whether or not Celeste Boris should be granted a protection order from Tim Ballard, which was connected to that incident report. The court hereby finds as follows: one, that Timothy Ballard and Celeste Boris had a close relationship and interacted almost every day for a period of about 1 year. Timothy Ballard and Celeste Boris interacted during normal work hours as executive assistant and interacted on evenings and weekends as couples ruse partners engaged in undercover activities for Operation Underground Railroad. 3, Ms. Boris felt close to Mr. Ballard and trusted Mr. Ballard. She was, not to no effect, by the way, at that time, Mrs. Boris. And to my knowledge, she still is, though obviously this put a strain on her relationship with Mike Boris. According to their lawsuit, this put their marriage in a bad situation. She was effectively, well, as you can imagine, yeah. 4, Ms. Boris' testimony about the incident in Linden, Utah shows by a preponderance of the evidence that a sexual violent act occurred. 5, Ms. Boris' testimony is credible and went into great detail about the act and described a piece of clothing that Ms. Boris believes that Mr. Ballard's DNA evidence was found upon, to the point that she submitted her skirt to law enforcement so that it could be processed for DNA testing. 6, Ms. Boris did not consent to the sexual act that occurred in Linden. Like this is like an actual official finding about what happened there. So you can explain it, explain away. Everybody's do their day in court, apparently, except for Kelly Suarez. Well, even she's do it, but I don't feel like she got it. Personally, that's my personal opinion. I'm not an attorney, consultant attorney. Look a little more here from this incident report. Officer reported, this is that incident report I referred to earlier also. He said, "How could Celeste be supportive of the person that did this to her? I told DG," that's Ballard's attorney, "I could not speak as to why it was not reported until now." DG said he understood after all that had come forwards on the Me Too movement, it is difficult to judge the behavior of the victim. But at the same time, DG said, it is hard for him to believe that based on what she is alleging, she had to have a lawyer tell her that what happened was not supposed to happen. Okay, I'm not victim. So basically, I mean that reads to me and my non-lawyer eyeballs and brain as, I don't mean to victim blame, but if a lawyer has to tell you that you were assaulted, you probably weren't. Is the way that feels. Somebody tell me I'm getting that wrong. Maybe I get that wrong. DG, again, Ballard's attorney, said this makes no sense to him. He said when you combined that with the communication she is having with him, it's too much to believe. DG said that there is a holy war going on in these cases. He said there was not a criminal case filed until after they had filed their civil litigation against Mr. Ballard for millions of dollars, right? Okay. This feels very much like victim blaming. I mean, you can say I'm not victim blaming, and then say some victim blaming shit, but that's victim blaming wherever you do. DG reported before Celeste filed the civil litigation, she stole documents from OUR. That's referring to these emails and such. DG said Celeste resigned on September 11th. He said she continues after she has resigned from OUR, and while she is preparing a civil lawsuit, she continues to access Mr. Ballard's email. DG said that she took documents from the computer and is using those to in her lawsuit. DG said ever after she initiates the lawsuit, she still accesses Mr. Ballard's computer to get documents and emails. He said that is not the type of person you can rely on, in his opinion. DG told me that he could get me the filings. I asked if they would have relevance to the Linden case. He said they would just show a lack of credibility. Yeah, police reports, man. I asked DG if Tim would like to make a statement on how his semen was and to get on Celeste's skirt. DG told me the semen got there through a consensual sexual encounter. Blah, blah, blah. We talked about this. So, there it is. It begins again. I enjoy going down the rabbit holes on these weird things, man. But I gotta be honest with you, there comes a point where it's like, we gotta talk about something else for a while. I'm glad that the Artemis 2 mission was going on this last week. It gave my brain something else to talk about. Unfortunately, it also made me think about the series I pretty much canceled, Non-Zero Chance, where I was talking about how we ought to be, as a godless church, coming up with a plan for how we can protect Earth from incoming asteroids, given that NASA's giving up on the quest. But the reason why I mention it is because I wanted to spin out when I was watching as Artemis 2 made it further than any manned space flight ever, and they were talking to the science department and the science in Houston, the science group, and they said, while we've been sitting here looking out the window, we've seen 4 meteorite flashes, and they were stunned. Apparently, there was no record of that happening like that, and it was just in a matter of a couple of hours that they saw 4 meteorite flashes, meaning that they saw a meteorite strike the moon while they were just sitting there watching it. Now, of course, everybody knows that meteorites have struck the moon. That's how those craters mainly got there, although apparently some of them, I guess, are calderas. Is that right or wrong? Somebody who knows moon stuff better than me, that they're volcanoes. But then, most of the little pot marks, they're all little, strikes of meteorites. And I said, and I was like watching, I'm like, we don't have a collective awareness, maybe because we don't want to, as human beings, of how many space rocks are hitting this planet all the time. And back when I was doing my podcast about, it was like it came down to at one point every 3 days there was news that said a space rock the size of a 747, a space rock the size of a 2-story building, of an 11-story building, of a roughly such size and mass, just flew past Earth and nobody noticed. And we didn't know it until it was almost gone. In one case, we were watching, and this guy out in Italy was able to take his telescope and train it on the point where the asteroid was supposed to cross through, and he actually saw the asteroid go by Earth, within like 10,000 miles or something like that, like something like that. It was far enough away that people looked at it and said, "Oh, when you say it nearly missed us by like thousands of miles." And I went, and I remember I was watching, like, that's not the point. The point is, we didn't see it until like the day before. And there's a satellite that is ready to deploy that was built specifically because NASA and our partners in Europe, and their partners in the European Space Agency, etc., have been working for years to develop a system to protect, to be able to mark and network and track all of the near Earth space objects. And Elon Musk and the Doge Commission canceled it. And it was like, and at the time I remember thinking, like, man, people don't realize this, but there is, 2004 YR4, which we codenamed Alma, who's the bad guy in the Korra horror story. We think is the bad guy in the Korra horror story. Had a non-zero chance of striking Earth in 2032 before it. At least it was judged that way by NASA before it disappeared behind the sun. It didn't disappear behind the sun. It's continuing in its course. We're continuing our course, and we won't be able to see it again from our position around the sun for another 2 years, I think. But as they've been tracking it, the likelihood that it would strike Earth went down to almost zero. And then started coming back up again when we lost track of it. Well, when we're no longer able to see it. And then at the same time, its likelihood that it would strike the moon when it came back around went down, 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 and then started coming back up, 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 up. And the models, even NASA was shocked to find that their own models were going a different direction than they had predicted. And the last that we saw of this rock, it was like this thing. I think it's about the size of like an 11-story building, roughly. But we still don't know exactly how dense it is. We don't know exactly the mass. This huge building-sized rock is either going to strike our moon in 2032, or come very near to it, or it will strike the Earth. And if it strikes the Earth, they plotted out a course of exactly at the speed and trajectory that they were looking at, where it might land. And it basically was this straight line that went from Asia Minor across the Atlantic, down over northern Africa, down through the Atlantic, and then striking straight across through the Amazon, straight off to the coast, of Peru. And it was basically the strike zone that said pretty much anywhere in here that if it doesn't hit the moon and it doesn't near miss to the Earth, it might land anywhere in this course. And I went, freaking heck, man! Why isn't everybody talking about this? We have like 6 years to get ready for what happens if this rock, this enormous rock, could hit the Earth in a replay of the strike that killed the dinosaurs. It's like every government in the world should be up in arms about, why did NASA cancel the telescope that tells us that where these near Earth objects are? The best minds in the world have worked on this thing, and they canceled it. And I'm not convinced that it's not because Elon Musk doesn't have a rocket that can lift it to space. I'm telling you, I'm convinced of it. I could be wrong. But it's boy, I sure love that podcast, man. I love that series a lot better than I love talking about Tim Ballard's spunk, man. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, Timmy. I'll talk about your spunk every day if you want, man. We live in interesting times. Anyways, day after tomorrow, which is really now tomorrow, we will have another godless sermon. I've been preparing a pretty good one. I thought that last week's was pretty good, but then I remembered that it was Easter and that there was apparently a general conference, Mormon general conference. So our attendance was, I was grateful to everybody who showed up. I'll say this. But if you didn't get to see MAGA Massacre from last Sunday, it was a good one. It was a little bit fire and brimstone for me, but I do those. Even my fire and brimstone sermons are pretty good. This week, it'll be more upbeat, but it'll be. I'm convinced this one's going to be pretty good. I won't give you a preview of it now, but I'll be releasing details tomorrow night, which is later tonight. I love you guys' faces. Shall we have ourselves a closing hymn to send you guys off into the night, with something a little bit better than Tim Ballard and his bad habits? Let's have ourselves an oldie but a goodie. What do you say? We've been playing all the new ones, and that's largely because I love them. I don't know if you guys have favorites out there. Of course, for a while there, Lick My Cupcake was like the undisputed favorite. And then we started getting, I feel like we've only been getting better and better with all of them. I was thinking we could do a non-zero chance just for old time's sake. I don't want to do that. Makes it easy. So don't forget, we have a non-zero chance. Flash break, my friends.
From empty pews to reasoned thought, we'll defend our pale blue dot. If the danger's great, but the odds are small, we Cora horse will heed the call. True